I'll call to order the Town Council Committee of the Whole special meeting of Tuesday, March 29th to order at 6:04. Councilors present are Councilors Kasiri, Baumgardner, Bordelon, Melendez, Jones, Parker, and McBride. On to new business, FYE 2023 proposed budget deliberations. And we have our superintendent of schools here. On our agenda tonight, we will be discussing the Board of Education budget. It can be found on page 166 of your FYE 2023 budgets. Welcome.
Hi, I'm Katrina Fitzgerald. I'm the vice chair. Our chairman, Kim Watson, is on the way. This budget maintains effective class size. It provides rigorous and relevant high-quality instruction. We have introduced the IB middle years, which is MYP, you might hear us say, that offers career clusters. Sorry, I ran in here. Career clusters and a diploma program with both schools on one campus, which is really helpful for sharing staff. Our students take AP classes, IB classes, and UConn classes, which you might hear called ECE, Early College Experience, and career programs to be college, career, and workforce ready. As you know, the referendum by the whole town voted in the Groton 2020, and that provided one new middle school, as well as 5 intra-district elementary magnet schools. And that balanced the needs in our community and the schools to mirror our community. Am I done?
You are.
Okay,
Thank you. Getting us started.
Catch my breath now.
Yeah, you can. So we're coming in with a 2.22 budget after the Board of Ed took what first rolled out as a 3.4 budget based on increase in salary and benefits, which is 77% of the total Board of Ed budget. There were a couple of things that came into play with that. Contracts that are negotiated, and also everyone's hitting that minimum wage obligation that needs to happen at $15 an hour. We were able to get ahead of that. We were really having a hard time with staffing of some of our really important jobs, like those paraprofessionals that are with those children one-to-one, our bus aides that help us with our special education fleet and really, help children in wheelchairs get off and on the bus. So really important jobs that are at that minimum wage, and so in order to get that staff, we really were proactive in moving those salaries up. So that's the heart of kind of the Board of Ed budget, but with the scrutiny of this Board of Ed going page by page, program by program, we were able to do things like reduce 4 FTEs with retirements that wouldn't be replaced at the high school.
Tell them what FTEs are.
FTEs are for each teacher, fiscal teacher salary, full-time equivalent, so not part-time. And then we adjusted severances and pensions based on the town report. So Mr. Burt works with Ken Knight, our business manager, and they, if bills come into on the town side that really are obligations of the board, sometimes they surprise us all, and we end up having to pay additional funds. We adjusted health insurance based on recalculations. We reduced custodial supplies and PPE based on the state funds and supplies that were given us, so we didn't have as much to do in that area for the following year. There were adjustments in liability insurance based on a town bill. I know that with our new schools, they cost more to insure, so we had to add into our budget to, to make sure that those costs were taken care of. The board and agency out-of-district placements are actually down, which is a good thing. We've provided many quality programs for children that used to be sent out that can now stay in our schools. And they come with social worker and qualified teachers and BCBAs, and it's a wonderful thing that they can ride the bus to their own school. What are BCBAs? Those are behavioral, really counseling, behavioral support people who have that high certification to help with behaviors. And then we have a reduction in out-of-district magnet tuitions because children are really coming back to Groton Public Schools with the opening of the middle school, with the ability to have a lottery. We were really able to fill up those 2 new schools. They have a capacity of about 600, and they're nearly there. You know, they're about 50 students away. So, and we're going to continue to do this lottery process. We also have to really carefully manage that health insurance reserve. In the past few years, we've taken from that, but we have to really plan to pay it back, and we manage it along the way. Some of the cost in the savings in the health account has been down, but we foresee that people will go back for those routine procedures that they'll need to do. In COVID in the 2 years, I think people have put off some things, so we're just making sure that we have the funding and the resources for that. So, and even when you look at the history of 11 years of our budget, you see a 0, 0, 1.4, 1.95, 2.17, below 0, 0, 0, 1.24. So you can only sustain 0 for so much time. The average of those 11 years is about, is under 1%. It's 0.6. And I just would like to introduce my staff, Ken Knight, who's the business manager. We have Sam Kilpatrick, who does finance, he does facilities, and he does transportation, and Dr. Phil Piazza, the assistant superintendent. So I guess I'm prepared to answer any questions that you might have. You can see what I've discussed about the budget, how it really kind of since 2017 to 2022, it was 76.4 million to 77.4 million, and then you see, the increase to 79 million in 2023, which is on the page 166.
Thank you.
There is no number on the floor. We need a number on the floor before discussion.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion for call center 10800 of $79,157,271. So moved.
Second, Bordelon.
Moved by Melendez, seconded by Bordelon. Any discussion? Counselor Jones?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Superintendent Austin, for being here, and your staff. Thank you. I want to focus on a couple areas, but one of them is on page 6, the ARPA funding, and the lower half of that page. So it's broken into 2 areas. We have personnel at the top and other at the bottom. And I want to know what we're spending approximately $1.9 million in ARPA funding for this year. I want to know what happens when the ARPA funding is gone. What happens to all of these people? Where do they go?
We have an ESSER 1 and ESSER 2, and the ESSER 1 has really been spent. The ESSER 2, we're kind of progressing through, and then there's the ARP ESSER. We really tried to look at staffing that we needed to support accelerated learning. So in these next few years, we have all the way to 2024, we have additional tutors in every building. They're working with small groups of students in the classroom, beyond the school day. We have enrichment programs that we have in all of our schools as well, really trying to engage kids in learning, fun robotics and, all kinds of science, STEM, arts events. And I would say that also in the summertime, we have a lot of those funds using for summer schools, summer camps that we've done over the years, and we really get a good turnout. It's open to all kids. We actually provide transportation, and it's a pretty significant part of the budget. We also have curriculum monies for teachers to work on accelerated learning and to work on differentiating in their classroom. Because after 2 years of COVID, when the students came back, we had to assess where they were, and then we had to find out what they already knew and find out what they didn't know, and make sure, we were moving right along.
So that's all good. What happens when the money runs out?
So we still have funds. We do have funds in our operating budget for the tutors, for math tutors, for ELA tutors, and some other grants that would take over. But we were able to amplify that and have twice as many tutors. We really are seeing some major progress for our students in their reading and their math, and we feel like this is going to take a couple years to accelerate learning, but we do feel like we'll get back
So if I look at the personnel in this, it's $1.3 million. Are you telling me you have $1.3 million sitting in your budget to pay for these people?
No, I don't think that many of them will be replaced. We have other monies in the budget for the standard one math tutor, one ELA tutor.
So at the moment, you're using some of the ARPA money to pay for them, but after 2020...
We're not paying for them. We're paying for additional tutors so that we really have that support staff, ample support staff.
But let's say 2025, when the money is gone, those people will probably also be gone, and some of those programs will be decreased. The additional ones will be gone.
We'll have the ones from the operating budget, but the additional ones will have done their job.
They will be signing 1, 2, or 3-year contracts based on which grant they're paid out of. At that point, when the grant is over, we will evaluate, the staff will evaluate whether they should be a permanent staff member based on the program, and then it will be determined whether or not we will have to take it out of our regular budget.
A lot of our tutors are retired teachers who come back. And so they're wonderful, and they've come back because they've really felt that this is their calling to help out during this time, but they've retired, so they kind of want to go back to some retirement. So.
Okay, all right. So the plan is they're not going to return. They have a limited contract.
Right.
The money pays to kind of get us out of COVID.
Yeah.
Give all the kids the services they need for this period of time, and then move it.
They will be evaluated after the grant is over, or prior to the grant being over, if we need to keep them as a permanent staff member.
All right.
Also, we have community coordinators in every building, and those are usually parents of some of the kids or their community members from, locally. And we've always had community coordinators in our budget, but we've basically taken them from a 10-hour position to a 20-hour position, and sometimes even more. They help out when the secretaries aren't there. They do so much for us. They call families. If we have children who are absent, they know the families. They get in touch with them. So we really felt like we needed twice as much time with them. And that will go back to kind of the standard level that we have in the budget when this all goes away.
All right. Can you just take a quick look at page 101? I just had a question on one of the administrators.
What section are you in?
I'm in the IT section at the back of the book.
What tab number?
5. Red tab, or the pink tab, I guess. Salmon tab.
Bruce, what was the page?
101.
5-101. So I noticed just looking through some of the different the salaries that have increased for different administrators, they're sort of in the 2 or 3%. This particular one, which is the IT administrator, it's an 8.3% increase. There's a couple of them that are in that range. Can you just sort of talk a little bit about why these individuals have such a bigger increase than seems like normal?
It's a couple step problem. It's not just a one-step problem. We had an IT director who left to go to another district at the same time that I came on and Mike left, so I basically was covering for him until August. So we were without a tech director, so we didn't, this was the actual fund that we paid that year, but it
Didn't go to a person?
it didn't, it was only for part of the year.
Okay.
and not the whole year. So then there was a jump up from what was budgeted to what the actual cost of to secure a high-quality person to fulfill that position.
Okay.
So it
So
was
it's-
two steps. So it was the fact that we didn't have a full-time person for the whole year because they left. And then when we finally got someone in, it cost us a little more than what we had predicted.
So it's not really a raise, it's a readjustment
No,
of the
it's a
salary for that
readjustment
person?
based
So-
on- yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, great, thank you very much.
Thank you. Counselor Kasiri?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Hi, Superintendent Austin. Thank you for being here. I'm looking at page 2-2. Could you just go over what the other benefits are for the employee benefits?
So you have,
I'm looking under employee benefits.
yep, I see it.
And then number
Health
12.
insurance, workers' comp, social security, and other.
Yep.
Ken, you want to help me out? Yeah, come on up.
Where's he go by the microphone?
Yeah, go by the microphone,
Can you sit by Bruce?
right here.
Next to Bruce.
So the other employee benefits are retirement or severance awards paid for teachers that are retiring from the system, as well as unemployment expense, tuition reimbursement, and then there's a small amount in there for mentor stipends.
Okay. Could you just explain why there's an 85.9% increase?
So in the previous year, we did not budget for retirement awards. We did pay those out in FY '21. So we took them out of last year's budget. This year's budget, we are anticipating paying for those in FY '23.
Okay, thank you. I'm looking at, same page, I'm looking at number 43 under equipment, instructional equipment. I'm seeing a 46.4% increase. If we could just go over
So-
what the increase is for that.
That actually comes through the site budget, and now that our schools are intra-district magnet, for instance, Northeast Academy is an arts and music school, and they needed some equipment repair for their musical instrument, and they needed to add to that. CK came in and they had some STEM projects they were working on and some technology needs. So each of the schools had something that kind of with their themed approach, they needed this additional equipment.
Great, thank you. All right, I'm looking at page 2-4. I'm looking at number 96. Instructional improvement services, if you could just go over that.
So these are services that come into our school to help support our students. We've just hired that BCBA that I was talking about, the behavioral specialist, but we also contract through Learn. So those are other folks who help support, especially in our special education programs.
Thank you, because I was just seeing an 18.3% increase there. And if you could just go over what number 104, other athletic services, with the 16.6% increase?
I believe that was the trainer, the athletic trainer?
No, actually, other athletic services, so these are additional services that are performed in the sports area, such as reconditioning of equipment. So I believe that the athletic director had put in for reconditioning of some equipment versus purchasing new.
Thank you. I'm looking at number 139, travel and conferences, and just looking for the 35.1% increase for conferences.
Well, as you can imagine, with COVID for 2 years, there has not been much travel. And we've actually done a really nice job sending teachers to national conferences on Zoom and getting twice as many people to be able to attend them.
Yep.
So I think that's just from 1 year from this past time, going up and looking. And I think there's some of that funding is really specific to the International Baccalaureate program, where it's really required, and the MYP. So we're still sending people, but we have taken kind of a hiatus for this past couple years and done more Zooms.
Great, thank you. And I'm just looking at 2-5, number 144, telephone repairs. There's a 34.6% increase.
We've changed over all of our telephones. We now have the VoIP system
voice-over
in the
IP.
clouds, and it was really needed. We had so many parents and people really frustrated because they weren't always able to get a line into the schools. So this was a massive project with all of our schools. So, and we have new handsets. The handsets didn't always work and weren't always getting our messages. So it was really important for safety and security that we had good phones.
Great, I think I experienced that this morning when I called in
Yeah, it
to
can still happen,
my
even though they're
children's
fixed.
school. I'm looking at number 161, same page, general classroom supplies. I'm seeing a 32% increase. Just wanted to know what the increase was.
So basically, the site budgets, we said to stay around 2% for all the categories that go on in the site budget, but it looks like the classroom supplies were an area, especially in the elementary schools. We've had new schools develop, so they've had to resupply their list in these new buildings. So that's what I'm imagining, that's really their supply list.
Great. And 2-6, I'm looking at audiovisual supplies with the 46.6% increase.
What line are you on?
I'm sorry, it's 206 on page 2-6.
If you look at it, it's usually, it's not a real huge budget. Sometimes the percents are misleading.
Yeah.
Because if you see it's a smaller budget and they had an increase of $3,000.
Okay. And I'm looking at the, probably same thing, but the 201.6% increase on instructional equipment on line 213. Or is that instrument? No, instructional equipment.
Instructional equipment.
Yep.
That tends to be some technology.
Yes, technology.
It's technology, and again, like you said, it wasn't that large a budget. I'm getting feedback, I'm sorry. And so that the actual increase looks like it was $25,000. Again, that comes through the site budgets, and that could have actually been CK's technology
CK, yeah.
equipment that they needed.
And just out of curiosity, I'm seeing that on music supplies on page 2-7, it's under supplies, line 21. I'm seeing that Northeast Academy has a $4,000 budget, and Mystic River Magnet School has a $7,000 budget, and I'm just curious as to why the Arts Magnet School is underneath the.
That's really done by the principals, and I think this is music supplies, so this is the music sheets and the things that go. I think he invested more in the music equipment to fix those instruments and get new instruments. So it was just a decision that the principal makes. Probably didn't need as many supplies as he needed equipment.
Great. Thank you very much.
Counselor Bordelon?
Thank you. My first question is, can you just tell me, also back to that same music line on 2-7, the high school is only getting $2,000 for the music. Looking at marching band, our equipment, I've been told over and over, is outdated, underperforming. Where are we funding our marching band in this budget? First question.
There's probably multiple places through the site budget. Are
Right.
you looking at the music supplies, line 21? So that, like I said, that's like your actual music, the supplies that go into music. That's not the music equipment. But we were made aware that there were some needs, and I know that Mr. Kelleher, Principal Kelleher, has worked with the band leader.
So
And
can you show me in the budget where you guys are funding marching band? To those concerns that were
I
addressed
can
at the
get
public.
back to you because there's probably many areas that
Right,
it's there.
and I think for the average person that does not review budgets, it is very encumbersome, and I think sometimes these object codes need to be stretched out a little bit so folks can understand what's under them. So making sure it's funded. Also fencing looked like their numbers weren't really high when I looked at site budgets, a little concerning there. I think as we fund IB and AB programs and we advance curriculum, it's wonderful, but the full body needs to be funded, and that is the well-rounded student in all extracurricular activities, and I'm seeing a lot of cuts in those areas, and it's drawing a lot of concern, especially with the decrease in the numbers of enrollment in marching band after our last marching band instructor was replaced with somebody else. We need to look at funding this in its entirety, if not more, and bringing in more supports. There's a lack of supports for marching band. The number of support teachers that were there before or have been like almost cut in half. And looking at surrounding towns. Fencing, there's a JV and a varsity for each level. Other districts have 4 fencing coaches. We barely show up with 1.5 or 2. I can support funding higher level education, but not every student is going to achieve in those areas, and we need to fund it at the level that we're capable of. So I keep seeing cuts there.
So they're actually in the contract, in the teacher contract, there's certain stipends for each of the sports and the number of assistants. So that's all done in a contractual way with the Board of Ed and the GEA.
Right, but we have a new, athletic director, so hopefully we can utilize that. Last minute, we got a marching band instructor. Last minute, we got a fencing coach having to advocate, and I just think there needs to be a much more proactive approach in making sure, thankful for the people who have stepped up, but I think we're not going
rebuilding
up.
both programs. I think fencing used to have 60, and now they have 30.
My
And
other
same thing
question
with-
is regarding curriculum, 11th grade English. If a student comes in freshman and sophomore year, they're taking college prep English. They're just ready to move up to honors English. There's no honors English. If a student is honors level coming into the high school and freshman and sophomore year they're taking honors level English and they're not ready to go up to AB or IB, there's no option.
What's your point of order?
So I'm checking to see.
What's your point of order?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
that does not pertain to the budget. Is that a line item?
Yes, it is.
We're talking about budget line items.
We
and
can
the
talk about
overall
anything about the budget.
Have the floor.
Individualized English
hasn't been
classes
announced.
and how the student can move to either course. We're talking about the budget here.
Okay, so there's a point of order. So we are supposed to, we have no say in how the dollars are divvied up. We just speak to the bottom line number. So I just ask counselors to keep their comments to dollar amounts.
Point of clarification, we're speaking about the budget, and yes, we're speaking about the whole dollar amount, but my understanding is that we're talking about how they're moving the money within
Okay.
the item lines. That's what I'm asking.
So,
I have a right to speak about the entire number and all the item
All right,
lines.
so just to,
Yeah.
okay.
So my
clarify
question again
one
is
thing.
about English. How come in this budget it's not
All
funding
right,
honors
I have the
English?
floor here just for a second.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I believe that question has been asked several times and answered by the superintendent.
Okay, thank you. So I have the floor. I just need to clarify one thing. A point of clarification, or as it is supposed to be known as point of information, is a request from a speaker to take the floor from the speaking person. So while a point of order takes the floor, a point of information does not. So if you make a point of information, you are essentially asking the person who has the floor whether they will yield the floor for you to ask your question. If they yield the floor and you get your answer, the floor goes back to the person who originally has the floor, and you do not get to respond to the answer that you just received. So just so we're clear on how point of information works. So you have the floor.
Thank you.
You have 30
So my
seconds left.
question is, in this budget, making sure we're funding all levels, is there a way in which we can try to bring in honors English 11 to be incorporated in a budget, which I don't see it in here. Is that correct?
The answer to the question is that honors level in grade 11 and 12 is the AP, IB, and ECE. And we really want kids to have that college-ready experience, the career pathways, and we want all kids. We've got a huge initiative in Groton with our diversity, equity, and inclusion vision to have all of our classes in those upper levels mirror this community. And in order to do that, we're going to support our students during that process, but that's the level that would be equivalent to honors in the 11th and 12th grade, those courses.
My other question is, when looking at the structure, and I'm asking because people have brought this up in the community, people are asking, where's the savings with the closing of the schools? Could you just address that?
I would be happy to. So there's something that we call cost savings, and that's when you close 3 schools and open 2, you'll see some savings, especially that, first year. And we did that. We saw that when I brought you a 0% budget for this year, because we were able to actually reduce some of the management oversight costs. We had fewer buildings to maintain. So all of those costs, we had some reductions in FTEs, which are, our teachers, the number of teachers that we had, and staff, and even an administrator. But cost avoidance is when that continues year after year. So you might see that savings from one year to the next, but a cost avoidance is when it goes away entirely and you never, see that, cost resurface. So we have seen in both the Groton 2020 with the closing of West Side and Cutler, coming into one middle school, we've seen some of those cost efficiencies and cost avoidances. And we saw that with our closing of our 3 elementary schools and opening the 2 new ones. Well, there's also CIPs that are savings. We're not fixing leaking roofs and working on HVAC because we have these new buildings that don't need that kind of care.
My other question was on page 67 of the large budget book, line item under miscellaneous unspecified. Could you just specify what falls under that line?
Counselor's time has expired, but you can answer the question.
I'm sorry?
Counselor's time has
We have
expired,
time
but
limits.
you can answer the question.
So I'm looking on page 167, and you asked me to look at
Miscellaneous unclassified.
I'm going to look to you for some help. Do you know miscellaneous unclassified?
I don't.
I'll have to get back to you on that.
Yeah, I just wanted to close that out. Again, these are areas of struggle when it's specified and it even says unspecified. A little bit more wording to these lines would be helpful for the public.
In our budget book, we tried to do a narrative, and we tried to tell you when things went up or went down, and tried to give you a little more information.
Thank you.
Yes, I don't know.
Counselor Baumgarten?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's good to see you, Superintendent, and our Board of Education as well. Just a few questions, maybe to piggyback off of some of Councilor Jones' earlier line of questioning. Just reviewing the documents in fiscal year 22, so this current fiscal year, spent about $829,000 on personnel through the ARPA ESSER portion of that grant. For this upcoming fiscal year, for FY23, $1,314,000, and then for FY24, about $2.24 million for personnel. Now for CARES ESSER 2, for last fiscal year, now this fiscal year, there's about $1,181,000. My question is, because that grant will be sunsetting after next year, are we going to then supplement or utilize ARPA ESSER to fund those positions? Because there will be a big jump between FY23 and 24.
We have it all laid out in a chart from ESSER 1 to ESSER 2 to ESSER 3, ARP ESSER, for the sustainability. And as I had said, there'll be some of those positions, like some of those tutoring positions, that we'll reevaluate, but will probably go away because we do have some of those tutors in the budget. We also have some social workers in here, but we also have social workers in our title funds. So sometimes you can shift from one grant to another. The categorical grants are those ones that we receive every year at a certain amount, and they kind of are pretty self-sustaining. And they really have the purpose of, giving our students, especially the students that have lower socioeconomics in those schools. Our schools are much more balanced now, so I always keep a section for the district because we have kids, throughout the district that have some of those high needs. EL students, special education, and the lower socioeconomic. So with the title funds, those are divvied out to schools and then to the district, and we do have some personnel in there too. So we can pick up, the extra personnel in that grant.
And certainly, my job is not to micromanage with the work you're doing. That's the job of the Board of Ed. But we do have a fiduciary responsibility of ensuring that, the budgets we pass, the taxpayers can certainly afford. And that is a concern of mine right now, especially if we're, looking at FY24, shouldering, $2.24 million on ARPA funds to fund personnel, compound that with Groton potentially coming off of it being an alliance district, which we do have a supplemental appropriation from the state through the ECS formula for that. My concern is if kind of all these things kind of happen at once, well then Groton, and should we raise the number from the minimum budget requirement that we have now, should these funds evaporate, where are we going to close that delta? Would we then be required to have to ask taxpayers to shoulder that bill? And certainly I want to do everything in my power to mitigate that, but I think anything we can do to maybe ease that cushion and obviously still do our part to ensure that, Groton gets its fair share of federal funds, which is obviously the job of our congressional delegation and the work of, Congressman Courtney getting those DODEA grants in, and certainly our state legislators as well with ensuring we don't get any ECS cuts.
Right. We have seen that increase in impact aid.
Yes.
And a lot of thanks to Congressman Courtney, and that's the funds that go directly as revenue to the town, and they've increased over the years.
So yeah, that's my biggest concern is really how much should some of those grants shoulder personnel, because that absolutely will impact the dollar amount that we're supposed to support, or that we will be voting on this evening. But aside from that, keep doing the great work you're doing. I know it hasn't been an easy transition, with the pandemic and our kids going back to schools, but I'm hearing great things, and keep up the great work.
Well, and I did testify on behalf of the bill that is going through right now, where we're number 34 now. 3 other districts are out, and they call it graduate, but they really have the Connecticut Education Department has really said that we'll be held harmless for 5 years. But you're right, at 5 years, then what happens? So we are very conscious of that, and we really do have a game plan of how this really is being used to accelerate learning at this time, to provide the kids the help and the support that they need now, but knowing that eventually, we won't have the number of staff that we have for this support. But there's always another grant.
Thank you. Councilor Franco?
Thank you. So looking through the school budget, I had noticed a couple of things. First, I think our biggest increase is in salary and wages.
Yes.
Out of the 1.7 increase that you're asking for, it's almost 1.3 million. So I've looked and I see that there is the function codes like 105 to 108, but it's sort of difficult to find in the booklet exactly what that covers.
What page are you on?
When I'm on page...
You're in the red section?
Yes, on like section 2-2. I'm in the salary and wages at the top. It's basically section 1 through 7, and that shows the increase of almost the 1.3 million. But when I look at the object numbers, it's hard to like pull out exactly what all those are. But then I turn to page 3-1 in the white section, and I'm also noticing you're expecting an increase of 185 students. So
We have this thing called the Columbia class submarine that's being built here and stationed here. And I think you've even done some studies in housing to look at, how are we going to support the folks coming into EB and on the base. So we already have 350 kindergartners signed up at this point, and we typically don't have nearly that number even over the summer. So, we are seeing a growth in our numbers and in our little children. Who knows, maybe Fitch High will have a class of over 400 again.
And also, are part of the staffing increases, are those contractual? Because it's a 2.56 increase, and on norm, an increase is somewhere up to 3%. So I would assume.
There's two things. We have the contract obligations and also minimum wage obligation. I was saying when I first got here that it was really hard to really hire some of the most significant staff that we needed. In special education, our paraprofessionals, their support one-on-one or in small group are essential for these kids, and especially coming back after COVID. It was very, very hard to get the personnel. And we've done a lot of recruiting, but, we had to really look at that minimum wage requirement of $15 that's out there coming, and we actually, the board supported negotiations with the paraprofessionals so that we could get ahead of it instead of behind it. And I think that was greatly appreciated. Our bus aides, our cafeteria workers, our maintenance department, which is contractual. So all of those people, really we had to consider those minimum wage and the contracts.
Okay, thank you. Also, towards the back of the book, it's 5-63. And this is summer school. I'm not really seeing any numbers in here. Can you comment on that?
So that's one of the areas that we are not pulling from the operation because our ESSER and ESSER have significant amounts of money for tutoring in the summer, for summer camps like we had last year. We even had a STEAM summer camp at the Groton Middle School. We had 3 different camps at the elementaries that were well attended. And then the high school has the credit recovery and also enrichment that they do through the APEX program and with teachers from the high school. So we really are pouring a lot of resources from those ESSER funds into giving our kids that support in the summer, during the school year, in school, after school, before school. We've even talked about bringing those services to the kids. So last year we bumped up the tutoring in partnership with the rec department. So the kids who were in the rec camp could get their tutoring right there from their teachers, the highly qualified reading teachers. And, looking to see even if there's a situation, we've done this in the past, where we bring some of our teachers to neighborhoods where the kids are to help give them the tutoring and the support and read alouds and all that good stuff. So a lot of that funding is for that. And, it will be picked up again in our budget, eventually, but right now we are able to provide it through the
Okay, that's
ESSER.
great, because I know there's a lot of people that have struggled after COVID happened.
That's right.
9-1, and this is for, wait a minute, no, I'm sorry, 5-63. No, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I was on
I need my
it's
glasses, too.
5-99. I'm so sorry. I was
So
going backwards.
5-99?
Yes, and this is on pupil transportation. And that's always, it's a large amount because transportation for children does cost a lot. And I'm seeing that the budget for '23, you're asking about $6 million.
Now, which line are you on 5.99?
I'm on the total.
Oh, okay.
So the total is about $6 million, and in the FYE budget 21, it was like $5.2 million. So it's an increase of about $800,000 over a couple of years, and it probably was impacted by COVID. And I know there was some changes within transportation this past year, so could you just give me a highlight of this?
That's, I think, purely the contract. So we're in a contract. It was a 5-year that we extended.
Correct. It's a 5-year, yep.
5-year. And so it's just purely the contract that we're in. We're up for renewal, so we'll see.
End of next year.
End of next year. So we'll see how it goes. But that's, we knew ahead of time that that was going to come up for us.
All right, because that's substantial for 2 years, an 800,000 increase. So, so then as I was looking, and as you have presented at your meetings with the community, and I'm not exactly sure what page, but you stated that the increase over the past 11 years is 0.6%. It's not even 1% increase.
Yeah.
And I have to say, although $1.7 million is a large chunk to swallow in a budget of our size, I think it is necessary to the point where when you look historically how tight you've kept everything, I don't see how to say no to this.
It's hard to sustain that zero, especially when you look at the times we're in, you know, and I think we do our due diligence. This board really has scrutinized everything. And you're right, we do know that with these federal funds and these extra funds, we have to be very careful with how this all plays out because we don't want a cliff. But you're right that this really does represent some efficiencies in Groton. And when you look at our per pupil spending, whether it's locally or in our DIRG, we're one of the lowest. And we actually had one board member who said, well, that's not good. What if people move into town? But I think that's also our efficiency because we go after a lot of competitive grants. This DODEA, since Mike and I have been here, has, you know, between the MSAP and the DODEAs, that's been nearly $10 million for that high quality instruction. So in addition to the budget.
Yes, because I did the math, and I mean, the budget is. And you've taken in state and federal and other miscellaneous, and that covers 31 million of it. And the town is responsible for about 48 million. I mean, I think that's substantial for what you have covered from the state and federal and with what we are remaining to pay.
Thank you. Councilor's time has expired. Councilor Bordelon.
Thank you. Looking on page 1-5, looking again at the grant section under Title I funding, how many schools are considered Title I in our town?
So currently, Mystic River, Thames River, Magnet, CK, and Groton Middle School are considered. And that's based on free and reduced lunch and the numbers. But we also, like I said, I do have a section for the district for those other schools that have high needs students in them. So we really, and any project that we do, we really try to make sure, especially like the elementary schools, that everybody has those opportunities, whether it's with Project O, whether it's with NEST, whether it's with the Mystic Museum of Art, that we really try to have those enrichments built in. And a lot of times Title I funds are for those extra enriching opportunities. They also pay for social workers, so even additional social workers in some of those schools that have high needs. And the principals, just like they do with their site budgets, they really monitor what the needs of the schools are. I don't try to micromanage the system. I believe, being a principal myself for over a decade, that it's really important that the principals know their families, their community, and they need to be responsible for both their operating budget and their grants budget if they're a title school.
Thank you. Also looking on that same page, looking at the Alliance District. We've been in Alliance District for a while, and we were hit on certain things from large numbers of people, of students that were having attendance issues and things like those. And now we're possibly going to score high enough, just enough to come off. where in this budget are we still using the social worker, or there was going to be extra staff helping with the, especially at the high school level, with tardiness and making sure career students were present? Is
So
that
we
still
still
being
have
funded?
social workers in our budget, and we do have kind of a crisis management team or an attendance team where really the administrators, the social workers, the counselors look at and monitor attendance on a regular basis, and they find out where the needs are. If there's students that aren't coming to school, they, especially during COVID for 2 years, they were going door to door. Social workers were bringing diapers and other things to households and food, and and just seeing what the family needed. What was holding kids back from being there. And that care and concern from the classroom teacher to the principal to the social worker is what makes a difference.
My other question is workforce readiness at the high school. Where are we at with that? I know at one point in the budget, we was talk of trying to look for grants for, the funding to make sure students are not just getting curricular education, but also getting workforce readiness. Is that being funded at all out of any of these grants, and moving towards looking and making sure that we are funding a ROTC program in our town?
So the latest grant we got was called a Department of Defense Education Activity STEM Careers Grant. K-12 careers, and I think I brought that to the council. We were very excited to get that grant, the 2021, and in that grant we do have an expansion of the career pathways with engineering, and we have an expansion of the pathway in health. So we're really looking at a pathway of service, so service to our country, service to our community. So that's the next expansion that we're looking to do. So that has, in that grant for 5 years through the Department of Defense, it does look at those career pathways and gives support for professional learning, for externships and internships. An externship is where the teacher goes out to industry and into the community and does the trade or learns the trade and comes back to the students, and also an internship where our kids get out and go into the business force and are able to see. So we're really excited about that particular grant.
And then also looking at the Title I funds, I know before all Title I schools qualified for free and reduced lunch before COVID, and then COVID came and they covered all the schools, even non-Title I.
Right.
Will this new budget be covering and making sure all children have access to free food in our district?
We're working on that right now. The free breakfast and lunch that was supported from federal funds did not get passed in Washington, so that was removed, unfortunately. I felt that was a really big piece of the bill that would really help all schools and all children. We are working on a program through the state called the Community Eligibility Provision, or CEP, and we had done this prior to the federal funds, where we had whole schools receive free and reduced lunch, but it just wasn't all the schools. We're also looking in and working with our representatives on SNAP paperwork, because our families, especially our military families, they don't receive Huskies, so they're not automatically in SNAP like the families that would need the health insurance. They have TRICARE. So we're going to really do a full-out campaign to get our families to fill out the paperwork to be able to feed all the students who really need it. We're really going to work on that.
So I guess my question, this budget, which would be next year, as of right now, this budget is not covering free lunch for everybody?
We're working on the CEP through the state.
Right. So in this current budget, though, the numbers are not covering free lunch?
No.
Okay, that's what would that number have to look like to make sure students could get free lunch next year, just in case that does not come through?
Well, I've got to see what the state's going to provide first to be able to determine that.
About 3 years ago, we looked into it, and it was about it was over $1.7 million, I think it was, that it would have cost.
All of our students who, and we'll support them with the paperwork, but all the families that are in need will be able to receive free and reduced lunch.
I guess my question was, we identified 1, 2, 3, 4 schools that are Title I, and then they bridge into the high school, and the high school is not being recognized as Title I, but all those kids that were identified as Title I are bridging into the high school, and now they're not able to get free lunch because Fitch is not considered a Title I school. So that just concerns me that those kids are going to fall as an outlier. And I was hoping that this budget would protect those students moving forward, and that Groton was going to keep on the initiative to make sure we found that kids need to have access to fresh meals, right?
Right.
So that's fine.
And certainly, though, the families that do have that need will make sure that the paperwork gets filled out, and they'll get that. And we have to see what the CEP comes out with, see how the state, looks at Groton and understands Groton for the full school. I mean, it really was a wonderful federal program when all of our schools were providing breakfast and lunch.
My last question is the Title I funds that are coming in to support the students, can that Title I funds be used for free and reduced lunch or free lunch for the students?
Title I funds cannot be used for food.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Kasiri?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Last question for me. Can you just explain why Mystic River Magnet and Thames River Magnet have 3 administrators when the rest of the elementaries have 2?
It's because of the number of students. They have close to 600 students each. They also are the only 2 schools that have pre-K through 5, so they have all of our preschool special ed programs with our typical peers. They have pre-K programs. Mystic River Magnet has our ABA, which is our autism program for all elementary, and Thames River has the academy program for students who need extra care with behaviors and social emotional learning. So because of the significant needs and the sheer number of students, they require additional support.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you. Counselor Jones?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Superintendent, what is the number you use for the MBR number? Is it the 79,157,000? It's the total.
Yeah, I think so.
It'll be the total budget request.
Outside of the grants.
Yes.
The grants aren't included.
Grants aren't included.
It's just that,
Yeah.
that's 7, so it gets reset to 79,157,000.
That's right.
In the grant areas, I noticed that the Magnet School Assistant Program and the DOD EA Math Grant weren't in the 2023. Is that something that has to be applied for, or are they expired?
That expires. Those were both 5-year programs, and that's an example of how we do sustain the work we've done. So those will end, but there won't be a cliff that's hanging, because we've really weeded out the additional staffing that was required for that grant. We've been able to purchase things for the middle school with the MSAP grant, a wonderful equipment and things that are here to stay, until we needed to replace them. And with the math grant, because of sustainability, they're allowing us to continue with a program that we've used in mathematics for the next year. So that's taken care of. So we really do have a pathway to sustainability with these. Even though they end after 5 years, we train our highly qualified math specialists and literacy specialists so that they, and even our coordination in the middle school, to be able to continue the journey. So they've had all this education, and so have the teachers with embedded coaching. But when new teachers come in, then you have a specialist, like a reading consultant or a math specialist that can help support the new teacher, and the classroom teachers around them. They all plan together and work together. So it's almost like you built this village of really highly qualified teachers who help support one another.
Are those sort of one-time grants? Can you reapply for them? Or
We're actually involved right now with Learn with another MSAP grant for another 5 years. It's a $15 million grant divided by the 3 districts, Learn, Goodwin College, and Groton. So we're hopeful on that one. And that will help give our magnet schools the extra resources they need to be magnetized in the next 5 years.
So our total grant package is $7.4 million, which is, just about 10% sort of our total budget. So our real budget is, like $86 million.
Right. I think, Ken, you had a really terrific slide.
Yeah, I don't think we included that one.
You don't think it's in here?
No.
No,
Oh, that wasn't it.
It was
No.
a previous version.
He's been drawing pictures and making graphs and charts for us for all different kinds of things, so we just understand things better. But you're right, that's an additional, it's a supplement. It's not a supplant to the budget, it's a supplement to the budget.
But it is our real budget that we're doing.
Oh, yeah, it did. I mean, you've shown the board both ways, going, forward and adding it on, or taking it and, showing them.
Are we, how does that compare to other districts? Are we better at getting grants? Are we
I
sort of in
would
the
say
same?
so.
Yeah?
I'll be pretty confident and tell you yes.
Okay, all right. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Keep doing it.
Thank you. Counselor Baumgartner?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 3 questions. ESL, obviously, the needs of the, say, ESL population have really skyrocketed in the last decade and continue to. Do we have enough coverage there, especially at the middle and high school levels?
We do. We are constantly looking at our students, and we're evaluating them through a Lost Link exam. So we look at them as those who are native speakers and coming, first-timers to our country, levels 1 through 5, and they get support really in the range of 1 through 3 until they can kind of graduate. Our youngest learners learn really quickly. It's amazing the growth that they have. We are considered a bilingual district because of the number of Spanish-speaking families that we have. And it's interesting because all of our schools seem to be getting community coordinators or staff members that speak Spanish too. So that's been a huge asset in the school community. But beyond the 3 full-time FTE teachers, we have 1 at the elementary level, 1 at the middle, and 1 at the high. We have some really highly trained tutors that for EL. And so we have, I think, 1 per building at least, and in some of the bigger buildings, we might have a second one. And then in the middle school, we have a couple of those tutors, and same thing at the high school. We might even have about 5. So those tutors are able to work with the teacher and then provide services to the kids, whether they're in the classroom or in addition to the classroom.
All right, now the Alliance grant. What is the total amount within the EECS formula that is technically Alliance funds?
24.040, 24 million, 25 million, and that's supposed to last for the next 5 years.
Okay.
Held
So
harmless.
25 million spread over those 5
We
years.
never really received a lot of additional funds like some of my other Alliance partner community, but we have received, at one point we had a $600,000 when we first became an Alliance district for the year, but then a $300,000, and now it's down to $200,000.
Excellent. And last, CIPs, there's no CIPs tucked away in this budget, right?
We do have 4.
4, but those, you'll be coming back.
We'll be coming back for that.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Some of the same things you've seen before that we just
Absolutely.
roll over,
Well, I know this year, almost every year I've been on the council, I've kind of harped on, if you do have CIPs, please don't include them in your operating budget. And so I appreciate that the Board of Ed has
I have to say that ARP ESSER does allow us to use some of that funding for HVAC, and we're certainly doing that. We've already taken care of some of that, right, Sam? We took care of something at Fitch, and so we when we planned this whole ARP ESSER budget out, we really planned to make sure that there were things for health and safety and business things that I could pick up and support. I've talked to John about that, how we can partner with things where I can cover a certain amount, and then in the CIP we have a little bit to do a study to see what more we need.
Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Franco?
Thank you. So with an increase that you're requesting this year, you mentioned you do projections, and I know it's hard to predict, but do you have anything that's on your radar for next year of how your budget may look next year?
Are you talking about FY24?
Yes.
Are we forecasting? No, I think we're really looking carefully. This board is really examining our staffing at the middle school and high school to look at those classes, to look at the AP, IB, ECE, and expanding those because those are really small classes. We want more kids to be having the opportunity to take these classes. So So our Latin program has kind of dwindled down, so we really met with every single student who was in the Latin program to see if they wanted to go forward, and the students who are going forward, the Latin teacher is now covering, she's dual certified, so she's going to cover the social studies, retirement, and also do a piece of Latin for those kids who are finishing up. So we're really trying to look at those classes. The board has been really vigilant about that and see where there are opportunities to grow a class or maybe not run a class if they're not full. So I would say in the future, we didn't have that many retirements this year, but as I look forward, forecasting, to continue to do what we did in this budget, if there are retirements that don't need to be filled and we can combine some things and really look at that carefully, that needs to happen. And share staff for the middle school and high school. The middle school classes tend to be a little larger than the high school. But right now we have a Project Lead the Way teacher that goes to the high school one day and comes to the middle school on another day. So doing more of that. We're a campus, so we can share some things.
Okay, and you're not seeing anything, maybe a projection of major increases in insurance or retirement funding, depending on where you are at that?
John?
I don't think so.
No, just real quick, David McBride can't raise his hand. I just tried to put him in the queue.
Okay, thank you.
I'm not seeing that.
You're not seeing
I'm
that.
hoping for more efficiencies.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Counselor McBride.
He's on mute.
You're muted if you're speaking.
And he had, you know what, I'm getting messages from different people. I guess the question out there is, for the athletic trainer position, is that being paid for by savings in the other professional services?
We had to adjust that, yes.
Is that
And that's now,
outside service?
it used to be an outside service. Now that we're a campus, it was really hard to find those people from the outside services. We have someone who is dedicated to Groton, and not only the high school field, but the middle school field as well. So we really feel like we've been able to get more out of this by having our own.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay, seeing none, I'll call for a vote on call center
I think it has to be a roll call.
10800 education services in the amount of $79,157,271. Counselor Kassiri?
Yes.
Counselor Baumgartner?
Yes.
Counselor Bordelon?
Yes.
Counselor Melendez is yes. Counselor Franco?
Yes.
Counselor Westervelt?
Yes.
Counselor Jones?
Yes.
Counselor Parker?
Yes.
Counselor McBride?
He's having some trouble. He just texted yes. But,
Okay.
I don't know if
If you can put that in the chat, put it in the chat, please.
I thought we couldn't use chat. Sure.
No, I think so.
That's what I'm told.
Can you call in? Is that acceptable? Or can you just call in, like get off Zoom and just call in? Everyone's fine. Everyone's fine. Good ideas for the week.
There's a will, there's a way.
Okay. All right. So
May I ask, is this vote going to count?
he will be an abstention.
I just don't think it'll record. I mean, he's not giving a vote.
Right.
Would be considered no vote.
Right, which is an abstention.
It's just no vote at all.
It's a no vote,
Now he's saying.
He's present in the meeting.
Oh, good.
but you have to be able to vote to be
All right,
counted.
he'll call in.
He's gonna call.
Okay.
It's already in the vote.
Yeah, we called the vote. Okay, thank you. So that carries 9 in favor, 0 opposed, 0 abstaining. Thank you.
Thank you, Town
Thank you
Council,
very much.
for listening to us, and if you ever want to come to a board meeting, you're welcome to join us.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Okay, so we are recessed until Wednesday, March 30th, 2022 at 6 p.m.
Can we take 10 minutes before we start our next meeting?
Thank you.
Call to order the Tuesday, March 29, 2022 Town Council Committee of the Whole special meeting at 7:29. All councilors are present. On to new business, NEH Data Center host municipality fee agreement. I make a motion to recommend a resolution discontinuing all efforts to pursue a municipal host fee agreement with NEH for properties generally located between Hazelnut Hill Road and Flanders Road, south of I-95. So moved.
Point of order.
Point of order.
What's your point of order?
I'm just a little concerned because I'm a little confused as what's going on.
What's your point of order?
Can you clarify that this was revised for something this afternoon?
That's not a point of order.
That is my point of order because it's not what was
That's not-
posted online originally.
That's not a point of order.
That's my point of order.
I need a second for this motion.
I think I'll ask a clarifying question
I
then.
need a second for the motion.
Clarifying question?
I'm not yielding the floor. Moved
your
by
choice.
Melendez, seconded by Franco.
Point of clarification?
I'm not yielding the floor. Any discussion? Counselor Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to read my thoughts sort of on the data center. Just want to talk a little bit about my thoughts on the data center project. I spent a lot of time listening and learning about data centers over the last month or so. Data centers are an important component of today's modern internet. Along with attending all the meetings with the community for the data center, I've walked the property of Flanders Road 4 times. 2 of the visits were extensive, walking over pretty much the entire property, up and down the hills, jumping over streams, and learning the lay of the land. Both of these visits, I walked with a couple of our conservation and environmental leaders, listening and learning. The 3rd visit was with Councilor Kaseri, the developer, and the project engineer. We had them show us exactly where they wanted to put the buildings. We had a good dialogue and got to ask a lot of questions. And the last visit was with the town manager and the mayor, showing them where the buildings would sit and getting a good look at the land. I also attended the Flanders Coffee with the councilors. It was an excellent event. Thank you, Councilor Franco. I was able to listen to the concerns of the Flanders Road residents and town residents. Residents were able to ask questions, were able to engage in good conversations about the data center. I'm also a resident of Flanders Road and live down the street, so I was able to bring some of my own concerns to that event. One of the bigger concerns that stood out was what kind of noise was going to be emitted from these buildings. It's something that's brought up a lot. People mentioned a kind of high-pitched, mosquito-sounding type of noise. I had no way to answer that question. The next day, Representative Jacome, RTM Representative Jacome, and I took a road trip to New Jersey and New York to learn about data centers. We visited 4 sites, 3 of them which were similar size to the buildings that are being proposed for the Flanders Road site. This isn't an apples-to-apples comparison. These buildings were much older than what's being proposed, but it just gave me a good feeling of the buildings, their size, sort of hearing the noise and kind of getting understanding what people were talking about. All of these buildings were located in industrial parks with some residential areas butting up against them. 3 of them emitted noise. Each building had its own unique sound. One of them had the high-pitched mosquito noise that people mentioned. I not only visited the buildings, we also went into the neighborhoods around a couple of them and talked to residents. You could hear the mosquito noise at quite a distance through a tree buffer, similar to what we have here. 3 buildings, 3 different kinds of noise. I've also sat and talked with the developer and listened to their concerns. It was important for me to have talked to all the parties involved in this project, residents, councilors, and the developer. I've done a lot of walking, a lot of listening, and pulling some ticks off. I've come to the conclusion from all of this that I cannot support these buildings or this agreement as it stands. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Counselor Baumgartner?
Yes, a few questions for the town manager. I have asked extensively regarding the power purchase agreement that would have to be signed between Groton Utilities and Any Edge. As I've stated before, the buildings that have been proposed are to be sited per the concept plans, cited in the Eversource electric service area. If Groton Utilities were to service power into Eversource land, would that open up the door to litigation for the town of Groton, to the town of Groton, to other parties?
First of all, it's in between service areas. I sent something to the council that came from Mayor Hedrick explaining it, and I think Ron Cadet. I don't have that on me, but it's in between, and they said it's not an issue. But if you want to give me a few minutes, I can look for that email.
And yes, please.
And it wouldn't be, it'd be really between them and not us. But
And I ask that because a couple of years ago, we completed the Groton 2020 school project construction, where we built Groton Middle School onto Merit property, which was protected open space. And that property is adjacent to Grosso Tech, which is powered by Groton Utilities because it is in the Groton Utilities district. So Groton Utilities could not feed power to the middle school because it was in the Eversource district. So I'm not sure why it would apply here. And I think we should definitely get some form of a response, I think even as high as the Attorney General's office on that. Secondly, I think Councilor Bordelon was trying to ask this question earlier. It was about the draft motions that we've received today. I believe we were on our third. The motion that was just read was the third motion that I had received in official correspondence. When I say official correspondence, I mean email to my town email, which should be the case. Just as a side note, we received a memo from Any Edge stating Any Edge reached out to town councilors, and included in the memo, it was mentioned that with the exception of one, I was that one counselor that was not reached out to. And I won't opine on as to why that was. But my greatest concern is ex parte communications that happen between the town council, boards or commissions that have regulatory responsibilities for these data centers. In no way do I find it ethical or okay for developers to have conversations with the people who are supposed to be the safeguards of the public trust and to do our due diligence in a fair and transparent, open manner. So I will never have those conversations. I refuse. I refuse. And we should all take an oath to do that. And quite frankly, if it is legal under our existing regulations, we should change our code of ethics to make sure that doesn't happen in the future.
Councilor's time has expired. Thank you.
Mayor? I did find the communication from Mayor Hedrick. When the property splits the service territory, the customer gets to choose the address for the service area and hence the provider. That is what happened with he said that's what happened with the high school in the past. He had to choose between the two service providers. So that's what he said.
Councilor Bordelon.
Thank you. What I was trying to point of order earlier is what I'll piggyback off of Councilor Baumgartner. Everyone up here either works or has responsibilities outside of the council. Emails coming through. We got an email of a change. Tonight I was planning only to come here for a Board of Ed budget meeting. Friday around 4-something, an email comes through stating that there's a special meeting, in which around 10:30 that night when I had free time, I emailed John Burt, town manager, and Juan Melendez, the mayor, and said, why is there no public comment on there? People who are for Any Edge should have the right to speak tonight, and anybody else. They did not respond, and then finally I sent a follow-up email Monday, and I got a response saying, I'm speaking on behalf of the constituents. I expect a response. Finally, I get a response back, and it comes from the town manager stating that Juan Melendez, it was his choice, and he felt that he did not want to add public comment. Why? What if you're for the development? Anytime we're putting something new, we should have the right to allow the community to speak. The memorandum came out shortly after the special meeting with all Mr. Quinn's new additions. Why? Why weren't these put in before? Why have I been up to 11 o'clock working on this night after night, week after week, weekend after weekend, with surprise emails coming in at 4 o'clock on Friday and more emails coming in today while people are at work till 5 o'clock? Changes in revisions to the resolution, an email from the attorney of the owner of the property up there in question, who has every right to sell his property, whoever, but their attorney says we have to slash out things at the last minute, and it's not posted on the town page till 4:30. Why? How am I supposed to do the council's work when things come through last minute? These are my concerns. This is why I feel there is a disconnect. We need to slow down. relook at our process here and figure out ways to make sure we're properly engaging with the counselors and the community. Councilor Baumgart spoke about the supposedly 8. I was one that was contacted. I read that text message that I got from Mr. Quinn, and I did not respond. I also do not feel comfortable where the town is giving him a tax benefit and relief that I should be talking directly with a developer. When I buy a house, you don't talk with the other seller's realtor. Why? Because it's a conflict. I don't feel comfortable having conversations that the public cannot see. That's what I campaigned on. I also feel any of the counselors that go out and meet with a developer, they should have to give a full typewritten report about what was discussed, or it should not happen. So this is how I feel. Looking at this, I feel there's a lot of things that just don't add up. The process seems to be broken, and therefore I'm not going to support this. My job is to make sure I have accessibility,
Counselor's time has
transparency,
expired.
and
Thank you.
accountability, and that did not happen in this process.
Counselor's time has expired. Thank you. Counselor Baumgartner.
Yes. To clarify, the resolution before us this evening, would this pause, and this is a question directed to the town manager, would this pause our ability to negotiate at the moment, in the future, or would this kill the deal indefinitely?
That updated version, maybe we should give a little more background on that, if that's okay.
Please.
Great, please. Thank you.
We did receive correspondence from the property owner's attorney bringing up a question as to whether the council can determine a certain property is not suitable for a particular use when that's typically a planning and zoning commission under their purview. But we received it today, so it's a little bit late. You can't get a full attorney review to look at that. So the mayor and I spoke with the attorneys. They said, they can't say, if you want to be safe, you should take that piece of it out and only look at the, without that, a resolution without the actual property mention and use. But this basically, and remember, Mr. Quinn had already asked for it to be on hold, so that's an option, is accepting that hold, or taking it off the table. But this would essentially stop it now, but he can reintroduce, just this version really just stops this, he can reintroduce something later and you could take it back up. And it does not, because of the way this is written, you would not have to have 6 votes, because it's just this exact version.
So essentially, to clarify, this resolution will make it easier to bring this item up in the future?
Yes.
Well, I heard a resounding no from the public, and so I'd like to make a motion to recommend a resolution discontinuing all efforts to pursue a municipal host fee agreement with Any Edge for properties located between Hazelnut Hill Road and Flanders Road, south of I-95, with prejudice, which means indefinitely for good.
Second, Bordelon.
Moved by Baumgartner, seconded by Bordelon. Now, I have a question for the manager. This resolution that was sent to us was written by our attorneys, essentially after we received correspondence from the property owner. With this new, and I don't think our attorneys are here, but with this new amended motion, raise concerns to our attorneys.
With the issues, they haven't had time to review it. It's not that they're saying it is an issue yet, but they, getting it last minute today, they cannot review it. So that, it's really, they can't give an opinion yet. But I will mention, just to mention on this version, it would still be able to be, no matter, even if you say with prejudice, 6 people could bring it back up later, no matter what you do.
May I reclaim my time?
Well, we have a new amended motion. Would you like to speak to your amended motion?
Please.
Yeah.
Well, I'd argue the public doesn't have time to wait on the attorneys, because one bad decision tonight or a vote on a motion that is insufficient for public consumption, for a public or a council vote, could set this town back quite a few years, especially opening the door to litigation, which we are down that road now with other projects. You know, shame. It's the saying, "Shame on you." Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. I've been down this road already with Restler. I voted for the project, and guess what? It wasn't the best vote I've ever taken.
Point of order.
What's your point of order?
Please do not bring up other topics. We're only on any edge this evening.
Certainly.
We do not want to conflict
Thank you.
the
That
issue.
point of order is well
Thank you.
taken. Please.
Absolutely. Point of order.
Put your
Thank you,
remarks
Council Parker.
relevant to any Edge Data Center host municipality agreement. Thank you.
But fool me twice, shame on me. And again, I heard a resounding no from the public, from the neighbors, from environmental advocates, from people concerned about the general welfare of this community, people who want a government that serves the people, that listens to their needs, that puts their needs before developers, that puts their needs before the people that do not elect us. And I'll be damned if I ever break that oath. And I very much appreciate the public for enlightening me on these issues. I've learned a lot about energy policy over the last few months, certainly a lot about legalese and contracts, and I feel like I've been doing my job because we are doing the homework, and I thank an educated populace for helping me do that homework. So I have nothing further to speak on this motion, and I strongly encourage my fellow councilors to support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. I just have a question for the manager. I'm struggling to understand. I don't see how this changes the original motion, in any significant way.
In your first motion, did you actually give the location and say it's not an appropriate use?
I think he just read the motion that I made and then just added with prejudice.
Oh, okay. So I thought you had read the alternative.
No, I have.
motion.
I have
so,
this.
So basically, it's the one on the floor.
It's the
that,
same
yeah,
thing.
It's not going to change
okay,
anything.
it's the same thing. Okay.
It's different.
It is.
With prejudice means it's not coming up again.
The motion is to recommend a resolution discontinuing all efforts to pursue a municipal host fee agreement with Any Edge for properties generally located between Hazelnut Hill Road and Flanders Road, south of I-95. With this motion that I read and the motion you read, the negotiations would be done.
But
it's the
they
same
could
thing.
not resume.
Point of information.
What is your point of information?
I'm sorry, can I ask a question to Mr.
Yeah.
Burke? 6 councilors could still bring it up again?
Yes.
Okay,
Right,
thank
so
you.
the 6 councilors can always bring up, we are the council. So with your motion, 6 councilors can bring it up. With my motion, 6 councilors can bring it up. This has no meaningful difference in any way. Any other discussion? Council Bordelon.
Thank you. I think the concern here is, this came through pretty quick on Friday night, blazing last Friday.
Point of order.
Nobody checked
What's your point of order?
This is repetitive.
I have the floor.
I'll allow the discussion.
Thank you. This came through blazing on Friday with all this memorandum, from Mr. Quinn and a quick resolution on the floor. My concern then is the process of how we're doing this. Why is the attorneys checking it then?
Point of order.
That was
What's
sent
your
on
point of
Friday.
order?
This point of order.
What's your point of order?
We don't typically send resolutions to them.
Argument is not. Did someone say stop?
No, what's your point
Sorry.
of order?
May I continue or no?
Yes.
That topic, the discussion from Council Bordelon was already brought up. We do not need to reiterate the argument. It needs to be substantive argument as a second turn. Thank you.
Okay. At this point, I will allow the discussion.
Thank you, Mayor. My concern, though, is, and now here we are at the 11th hour again, many emails coming through, and we're saying the attorney has to review certain language. Again, the process, as Counselor Baumgartner has stated, with other things that have come forward, how do we make it, is there a motion, Mr. Burt, that we can put on the floor that would make it so it couldn't come back? What it would have to say? No,
You'd
so
have to amend it,
anything
right. can
can come back with 6 counselors.
Absolutely.
So I guess my concern too is, I can't see any other way. We already went down this path with a rush motion that came through and got space. We have a contract with a developer for a data center already. And people seem to forget that.
Point of
so
order.
I'm questioning.
What is your point of order?
Point of order. Point of order, please do not bring up any other companies. The company we need to talk about is Any Edge, not any other topic.
Your point of order is well taken.
Council
Please
Bordelon
keep
Brown.
your
Thank you.
comments.
Thank you, Councilor
Let me
Parker.
finish my point of order, my ruling on the point of order. Your point of order is well taken. Please keep your comments relevant to Any Edge,
Thank
not
you.
to any other company.
Thank you, Mayor Melendez and Councilor Parker. It is pertinent, I won't say the name, but data centers is what we're talking about in general. And when improving another data center, we need to look at what's going on in the town in conjunction with it. So it's pertinent to data centers. There's a lot of things here that I just don't, there's a lot of missing parts. And I don't see any other way but to vote in the way that was stated, to have this, if 6 counselors want to bring this back to the table, that's up to them, but I don't see how we could or should. And I think we need to listen to our community. Our community has spoken, and they do not want this in their backyard. They do not want to hear the hum. And quite frankly, my next question is for Mr. Burt. Does our planning and zoning regulations state anything about data centers?
There was a finding by the zoning officer, that the zoning official, that it falls under industrial. That is his job. That's how our ordinance is written, for him to make those determinations.
All right, I guess my question is, because data centers weren't even a thing when those regulations were written. So I'm a little concerned about how we can make a judgment on that. And that's, is that still being looked at, or what's your plan? When are they going to come speak before us so we can understand that as well?
Well, if they want to change it, it'd be up to the Planning and Zoning Commission. This is how our current process works. It happens all the time.
No further comments.
And it's common throughout the country. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Parker?
I'd like to put another motion on the floor, please. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right.
I move to postpone the discussion until April 12th.
Is there a second?
Second.
Move to postpone, made by Councilor Parker, seconded by Councilor Franco. Councilor Parker, would you like to speak to your motion?
Since there was concerns about receiving information, not only from Friday and today, I figured we need to do it in depth and have the attorneys speak to each other regarding the email from the other person. And this way gives everyone time to review the information at hand and to confirm that we are not doing anything illegally or stepping down a slippery slope. That's all I have.
Thank you. Councilor Franco?
Thank you. So this is really the first time we're having a discussion on the data center with the community and letting you know where we stand on the matter.
Point of order.
What's your point of order?
Mr. Mayor, Section 6119 of Robert's Rules of Orders is in regard to noise from non-members. If you could ask our audience to please be quiet.
Yes, thank you. Will our guests please allow the councilors the floor? Councilor Franco, you have the floor.
We only pay taxes, that's all.
Councilor Franco, you have the floor.
Point of order.
What's your point of order?
There's commentary from other counselors.
Councilors, if you have something to say, only say if you have the floor. Councilor Franco, you have the floor.
Thank you. So as I was saying, this is the first time we're really able to have a discussion and let the community know where we stand. We've had a presentations, we've had public presentations, and we've had public comments, but this is the first time we can speak. With that being said, I'd like the community to understand that this is not an RFP process. We did not invite them to come to our community. They have the right to come to us and ask for this. It's by state statute that they have the right to come and ask for this.
We have the right to say yes or no.
Councilor Franco, you have the floor.
Rise to a question of privilege, please.
Councilor Parker?
My rise is to I'm complaining about the noise from the commentary from the people in public. We are trying to have a meeting, and we need to continue the business.
Thank you. Councilor Franco, you have the floor.
Thank you. And with that, it has been many comments stating that what we shouldn't put on property, there's issues with wetlands up there. I am not planning and zoning. I am not wetlands. I do not know these statutes. I do not know their regulations. My role as a town councilor is to deal with an agreement, and whether I think it's good or it's not. That is my role. With that, I also don't think whatever happens with Groton Utilities and that part of their contract is my responsibility. That is their decisions, and we do not oversee Groton Utilities. I am not opposed to data centers in general. I have major concerns about sound and how that would affect our community. And if we were going to vote on this tonight as an agreement, I would say no. We are not a regulatory body, we are a legislative body. The regulatory body is planning and zoning. And I do not have the knowledge on what they do or the wetlands. As people are talking about process and of that nature, we have not asked or invited the developers to sit at our table either to answer any questions, for which we have done that with every other development sort of process that comes our way, so that we can ask questions of them or they can make a statement as to what they think is going on at this moment. Were you going to invite them to sit here and answer any kind of questions?
The developer?
Yes.
If you ask them a question, I'm sure they'll be happy to answer.
They're not here. They weren't invited to sit at the table.
Okay, so right now we are just discussing whether, but if that fails and you wish to ask the developer a question, I'm sure they will come sit here and answer your question.
So if I have questions to ask them in regards to whether I want to postpone the vote, they should be here to answer them.
You can do it right now. Yep.
Are you going to invite them to the table?
Just ask a question. Sure. Come sit at the table. You got a question? What's your question?
Mr. Mayor, point of order.
What's the point of
There
order?
are no point of orders from the audience. No.
Okay. I need order in the room. What's your question for the developer? You have 8 seconds left, so you got one question.
I'll wait for my next turn, thank you.
Point of order.
What's your point of order?
I feel that the public, and I reached out on Friday
That's not
to
a point of
ask,
order.
this is my point of order, that this is irrelevant.
That's not a point of
And it's
order.
not appropriate, it's not even on the agenda. That
What?
the developer was speaking tonight.
The developer's not speaking.
They're not speaking? They're going to be answering questions. That wasn't on the agenda.
Manager Burt, is it precedent to have the people answering questions on each agenda item listed in the agenda?
Typically be when we're actually looking at an agreement in terms of whether to adopt that or not.
Not now.
The reason I didn't invite was typically it wouldn't be in this process because that's not what's before us.
Okay, so we're going to vote right
it's up
now
to the mayor.
on whether or not to postpone the vote until
Wait,
April 12th.
We are not finished with
All in
discussions.
favor, say aye.
Hey.
No, wait a minute.
All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Abstentions? We are voting on the postponement. That is the motion on the floor.
I have a question.
Councilor Westervelt.
Okay,
Did you call a vote? Did you call for a vote?
Yeah, you can't ask a question when you call for a vote.
I call a vote, no one voted.
He called for a vote.
And you have to vote.
Okay. All in favor, say aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Abstentions? I only got 3 votes.
I'm protesting my vote.
That's an abstention.
I'm not abstaining. I'm not speaking.
I got 0 in favor, 3 opposed. Councilors Parker, Jones, Kasiri, and Melendez, that's 4 opposed, and 5 abstaining.
McBride this is David McBride. I was with that group as well. I'm not sure if you heard me.
So you're a nay?
The group to postpone. I'm in favor of postponing it to provide proper timing to review.
Okay, so I have 1 in favor, McBride.
I'm in favor of postponing as well.
Westervelt in favor of postponement. Anyone else in favor?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilor Parker,
Mr. Mayor,
how are you voting?
could you please do a roll call vote? I'm voting. I voted to postpone.
Councilor Bordelon, how do you vote?
I guess I'm a little unclear what we're doing.
We're voting on whether to postpone to April 12th. How do you vote?
I haven't had a chance to speak to that motion.
The vote is called. How do you vote?
Move the motion too fast.
How do you vote?
I call point of order on that.
How do you vote? The vote is called.
I think you cannot just call something without allowing people to speak.
How do you vote?
I did not get a chance to speak to the motion.
How do you vote?
I did not get a chance to speak to the motion. Town Manager Burt, that motion was put on the floor and quickly brought to a vote without any counselor having a chance to speak to the motion.
How do you vote?
I refer to the clerk to ask her for clarification on that, for a process Robert's rules. I have a Robert's rules inquiry.
Not gonna like what I say. There was dialogue and there was discussion on this motion. It was Parker that put it on the floor and Councilor Franco seconded it. So, and there was discussion that varied all over the place, not just about postponement. And I might remind everyone that this is a special meeting and you can't add anything to the agenda, including inviting people to speak.
Correct.
How do you vote?
Yes.
How do you vote?
I'm voting no to this then.
No to postpone.
No to postpone.
Thank you.
And point of order.
Councilor Baumgartner, how do you vote?
Point of order.
Yes.
The question was not moved. There were hands raised, which meant there were hands raised.
I called the question. Councilor Baumgartner, how do you vote?
Are you choosing what you call when you call it now?
Councilor Baumgartner, how do you vote?
You did not call the question, Mr.
Since when do you call questions randomly?
Councilor Baumgartner, how do you vote? We are in the middle of a vote.
This is an illegal vote.
You can't just call.
Nothing illegal about the vote.
Order.
We are in the middle of a vote. Councilor Baumgartner, how do you vote?
You can't call for a vote.
We didn't get a chance to comment or raise our hands.
There were, Councilor Westervelt had his hand raised, and as soon as this motion is passed, discussion on this will be over.
Once I call the vote, we have to have the vote.
Why are you not allowing us to speak? Why are you calling it so fast?
I called the vote. We have to vote. Councilor Baumgartner, how do you vote?
I vote nay.
Thank you.
This is exactly what we're dealing with.
Councilor Kasiri. Vote to postpone, yay or nay?
No.
Councilor Franco.
Yes.
Counselor Jones.
No.
Counselor McBride.
Yes, yep,
Counselor Parker.
Yes to postpone.
Counselor Westervelt.
Yes to postpone.
I vote no. The vote to postpone fails. 4 in favor, Franco, McBride, Parker, Westervelt. 5 against, 0 abstaining. We're back to Counselor Baumgartner's motion.
Point of clarification.
I will not yield the floor. Counselor Franco, you have the floor.
Point of order.
What's your point of order?
Madam Clerk stated that people should not be able to speak that were not part of the agenda.
I'm sorry for inviting you up. You cannot speak with us tonight. Counselor Franco, you have the floor.
I think this process is not going as normal. And Councilor Westervelt did have his hand raised before you called the vote. You may not have noticed it, but I'm protesting the way this is being handled, and I do not think this is the norm. And I do recall in the last 4 years that I've been on the council, reading Robert's rules, and it's stating that if somebody said, wait, I have a question, just because you started to call the roll or call the question, you should stop as the mayor and allow people to continue dialogue, especially when a counselor has not spoken at all.
Thank you. So, first of all, I had no hands raised when I called the vote. Councilor Westervelt brought to my attention that he had his hand raised. I did not see it. The clerk had the opinion that once the vote is called, we must vote. Councilor Franco, you have the floor.
I yield my time.
Thank you.
Point of information.
What's your point of information?
Can I just inquire as to whether or not Councilor Baumgartner's motion is too similar to the first one?
They're exactly the same.
Okay.
Point of information.
What's your point of information?
Asking the town manager or the attorney had written a different version that should have been read tonight because it didn't state location. Is the current one in order? Or does that also bring up liability because it states location?
Well, the issue is they haven't had a chance to review it. So, they really can't weigh in on that at this point. When the mayor and I met with them, we asked for another version in case it was needed. It's really an alternate version.
So is the alternate one the safer version compared to the one that was read tonight?
Likely. I mean, without an opinion, it's hard to know exactly what's what, but.
Thank you.
Councilor Kassiri,
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to make a motion.
what's your motion?
Make a motion to recommend to the council to adopt a resolution ceasing negotiations with any edge on the current host municipality fee agreement.
Second.
Moved by Kassiri, seconded by Jones. I don't see how this is different, but
This is
if you want to speak to your motion.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is the motion that just is removing the location as advised by the attorneys. May I continue?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone. First, I just want to address some of the speculation, and I cannot speak on behalf of others, but why I have chosen not to speak out on my opinion of the data center host fee agreement until now. During the conversations regarding the development of the Mystic Oral School, I heard an overwhelming request for transparency in the process of town governance. In my opinion, the most transparent place for a town councilor to have these discussions is right here during town meetings when items are placed on the agenda, and the public knows that an item will be discussed. There are a significant amount of people in our community that do not have social media, meaning that they do not have access to the Groton Community Forum, nor the Nextdoor app, and some of our residents may not be privileged enough to purchase local newspapers, or may not have the time to read articles online. Therefore, this is the proper forum for me to speak directly to my constituents so that everyone in our town has fair and equitable access to my voice, which represents you. This is what I believe to be transparency. Up until this point, town councilors have not had the opportunity to speak during our meetings on this topic. There have been opportunities for public comment, but this item has not been on our agenda. This means that if I had spoken during response to citizens' petitions or during communications, this could have possibly been a FOIA violation and also would not have notified the public since it was not on our agenda. I also want to address some of the questions of collaborating or working with planning and zoning. The Planning and Zoning Commission is a commission whose members are appointed by the town council. The Planning and Zoning Commission are authorized to regulate the construction, reconstruction, alteration, or use of building or structures and the use of land. The commission shall provide for the manner in which zoning regulation shall be enforced. Planning and zoning has a very specific role that is indicated by Connecticut general statutes. The town council's role is to legislate the town by representing our constituents. Therefore, our roles are entirely two different entities. We should not be trying to influence the other to act in a specific way, as we are tasked with two different assignments. If our two tasks should overlap, then we should all be asking ourselves, what is our role? What does Connecticut general statutes and the town charter say I have the authority to do? Am I overstepping my task, my role, or my authority by interfering in another board, commissioner, governing body's role? So with that, up until this point, I have listened to your public comments. I have read your emails. I have attended coffee with counselors. I have toured the property. I have read the agreements as they've been adapted. I have sought out my own research. At this time, I could not in good conscience vote for a data center host fee agreement without fully understanding the noise attenuation issues. Until this can be studied by an expert, I cannot subject affected neighbors to a building that could potentially create an unlivable environment. I believe it is in my scope to make sure that I have done my due diligence for the host agreement. At this time, I do not think we have successfully rendered an agreement that protects the neighbors. There are other completely understandable concerns. However, many of those concerns may be under the purview of planning and zoning or inland or wetlands. And I want to make it clear that we need good development in Groton to build our grand list, to unburden our taxpayers, and to ensure a prosperous future for our children. As a parent, supporting appropriate development will be a priority for me. However, there are just too many questions about this host fee agreement at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just would like to align my comments along with Councilor Kassiri and her placing this motion on the floor from the advice of, listening to the advice of our town manager and any sort of legal issues that may come arise by putting the names of the streets into the previous motion. I think this is a better way to go. It keeps us clean, and I think the town manager has given us good advice on where we should be. So I'll be supporting the motion that's on the floor.
Thank you. Manager Burt.
I just want to make it clear, the attorneys didn't give advice to this. They prepared an alternate, it's obviously anytime you cut any items out, you have less liability. They prepared an alternate for you to consider. That was not advice because they have not had time to actually review the issue.
Thank you. Councilor Baumgartner.
Yes, I have a question for Councilor Kassiri. Very much respect your statement, and thank you for those words. Will this motion permit the town any edge from re-engaging in discussions at a later date, another point?
May I answer, Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I believe this gives us, these 6 counselors, the ability to open it back up again, just like the other motions. Is that correct, Mr. Burt?
Right now, the way it's written, and you did read the new one?
I did read
just
the new one,
verify?
yes.
Well, depending where you're talking about the motion or the resolution, the way the resolution, if you use the alternate resolution and didn't change it, basically says this current version is is being turned down. To me, that I'd have to talk to attorneys more, but I'm not sure it would, if you had a brand new version, I'm not sure it would require 6 votes. So.
Councilor Baumgartner?
So this resolution, ignoring, I mean, 5 people want to bring it up, 6 people, it doesn't matter. The real question is, can it come up again in this body? Can we vote to continue pursuing a host fee agreement, we being the town of Groton? Can we do that in the future if we vote on this current motion on the floor?
Yes, with 6 votes there, like this one's probably only 5, but no matter what you do, there's nothing you can do to stop, with current town council rules, to stop it from 6 votes bringing something back up. Or when the time lapses, I forget offhand if it's 6 months. It's a year. After a year, then it would just be a normal process again. But before that, it would be 6 votes for the original resolution.
There's nothing we can do to prevent 6 counselors in the future from bringing any item back.
Well, there was also nothing, and through you, Mr. Mayor, there was nothing permitting or not permitting the town from negotiating with any edge to begin with. So shouldn't we have, with that logic, shouldn't we have voted to even allow the town to pursue negotiations with any edge? I mean, the town didn't issue an RFP for data centers. So what assurances do we have as a town that that actually won't happen?
Well, of course, if the council gives any certain direction, then we follow it. Barring that, I'm in negotiations on things non-stop throughout my job. So if nothing was required in this instance, but if the council gives direction, then that's what we follow.
All right, and this is where it would probably be helpful to have the town attorney present this evening, but I would like a clarification on whether or not the with prejudice that I had included in the second motion has really any weight. I mean, now I'm questioning like really well thought out research that I've done in the last couple of days.
If you want to take a recess like tonight, I could try to get a hold of them.
We are recessed for 10 minutes. We'll be back at 8:27.
between Councilor Kasiri's motion and my motion.
So the original resolution motion, you would need the 6 people to bring it back up. And then with the newer one, you would need 5 people.
Well, and I mean this with the greatest respect to Councilor Kasiri. I certainly support her intent. However, I would like this to be as difficult as possible to bring back up, so I will be voting no.
Councilor Kasiri?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would also just like to point out that this, my motion actually took the address out of the resolution as well, which was, I don't want to say encouraged by the attorneys, but it was recommended just because we were getting into some language there. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Bordelon?
Yes, I also agree with Councilor Baumgartner. With no disrespect to Councilor Kasiri, I think I like the fact that it would take 6 councilors before it to come back, so I would be supporting Councilor Baumgartner's motion. And I appreciate the town manager getting some clarification on that, with it being the way our rules are written. So if I'm hearing correctly, again, it's anything that comes before us, anything can come back with 6 votes, no matter how it's worded.
Correct.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Councilor Westervelt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, everybody. I've been kind of quiet through this whole thing. I'm one of those who, didn't get a lot of this information until the last minute, and I've been working really hard to find out as much as I can about data centers, the goods, the bads, everything about them. And to be completely transparent, I did meet with the developer because I felt it was my duty to hear him out, and I have not been able to hear him directly without talking to him. So I don't think that I did anything wrong in speaking with him. So that's my point there, because I've also spoken to neighbors who have differing opinions on that as well, some in favor and some that are not. So for full transparency, I just want you to know that I'm doing the best I can to get as much information as I can. I voted to postpone because I think a couple of weeks would not kill us, so that we could get more information and try to get answers. But that got shot down, so that's the way it is. I want more information. I want to know more about this. So I will be abstaining, because if I can't do my job fully, I just won't vote. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so before I call this vote, I'm going to make sure that nobody else wants to speak. Nobody else wants to speak? All right.
Oh, David McBride has his hand up.
You almost got me. Councilor McBride.
Yes, thank you. This is Councilor McBride. I just want to provide a couple other pieces of information. A lot of council reports were given tonight on where they stand on data centers, and I just want to make everyone aware, because there seems to be more people there this evening. Then I did provide a council report on 322 that provided the details of where I stand regarding the data center, as well as continue to inform, and I will continue to do this every meeting. I did research and find out that that is not FYE-able, so I will be providing reports as part of my council report to let the constituents and residents know where I stand on various matters. I'm not going to go through that report. If anyone would like to, I'll briefly touch upon it, just because some other councilors have indicated they have. But in summary, I stated I was not in favor of the HCA in its current form, and I plan on making numerous changes to it. I will not go into detail about those changes. However, I'm going to list a few of them. I notified and informed that noise consultant should be hired. Number 2 is retrofitted Tier 2 to Tier 4 generators. The developer should pay for all costs of locally joining households. Traffic should be required to enter and exit from different sites. And I went into some details about that, as well as a setback requirement of 200 feet. I also proposed the pilot. The pilot was not sufficient, and proposed matters to make sure that was more equitable, in line with an enterprise zone or a TIF zone. So that could be heard on the prior meeting if anyone wants more detail. But again, I was not in favor of it. I voted to bring it to, on 315, I voted to intend to bring it to a vote with the thought that we had received a lot of information from constituents, and that I was planning on bringing these comments to this group for additional changes.
Thank you.
With that being said, well, I got a few more points, but I'll make it quick.
Absolutely.
With that being said, I'm not in favor of it as it is. My major point last week has been that the process is incorrect. I briefed on that last week as well. I believe we should be making these changes that I pointed out, as well as other modifications that councilors have to the host community agreement, independent of the current proposal location and independent of the current developer. My thought is that if and then when the town were to desire a future data center, it could be at a different location if need be with a different developer, but it's at one point along the line, we need to get in step with all of the constituents' comments, and I think we can do that without moving forward with a particular developer or a particular location. So I totally agree with some of the councilors tonight in terms of they're saying the process is flawed. However, I also believe by approving this position tonight, we're also continuing to act and make rush decisions that may have legal ramifications. So therefore, I cannot support this motion in its current form. We're continuing to do the same thing we've done in the past, making rush decisions. But I want to be clear. I am not saying I'm in support of the current location, and I'm not saying I'm in support of the developer. I'm simply stating that more work needs to be done before any long-term decisions can be completed, and therefore, I will be abstaining from this vote tonight because we're continuing to rush the process when we shouldn't be. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Any other hands? Okay. So first we will be voting on Councilor Kasiri's motion. I'll read it again. Motion to recommend to the council to adopt a resolution ceasing negotiations with Any Edge on the current host municipality fee agreement. All right. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Can you do a roll call?
Councilor Bordelon, how do you vote?
No.
Councilor Baumgartner?
No.
Councilor Kasiri?
Yes.
Councilor Franco?
No.
Councilor Jones?
Yes.
Councilor McBride?
Abstain.
Councilor Parker?
Abstain.
Councilor Westervelt?
Abstain.
Okay. That fails 3 in favor, 2 in, and my vote is in favor. So that fails 3 in favor, Kasiri, Jones, Melendez, 3 opposed, Bordelon, Baumgartner, Franco, and 3 abstaining, McBride, Parker, Westervelt. So we are back to Councilor Baumgartner's motion. All in favor?
Mr. Mayor, could you
Yes.
please repeat it?
Councilor Baumgartner, could you repeat your motion?
The motion is to recommend a resolution discontinuing all efforts to pursue a municipal host fee agreement with Any Edge for properties generally located between Hazelnut Hill Road and Flanders Road south of I-95 with prejudice.
Okay. All in favor say aye.
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 Aye. And I request a roll call vote.
Roll call.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes?
could you, roll call, please?
Yes.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
Councilor Franco had her hand up to ask.
Aye.
I would honor her request to speak.
I would also let her speak.
Clerk McCousher.
Yes,
Um,
sorry. Did you ask me a question?
right. Do you have an opinion on this? Did I call the vote officially or not?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Had I officially called the vote or not? Do you have an opinion?
You called the vote and you asked for Councilor Baumgartner to repeat the motion, and then someone asked for a roll call vote.
Okay.
So once somebody asks for a roll call, supposed to honor that roll call vote.
All right, Counselor Bordelon, how do you vote on Counselor Baumgartner's motion?
Yes.
Counselor Baumgartner?
Aye.
Counselor Kasiri?
Yes.
Counselor Franco?
No.
Counselor Jones?
Yes.
Counselor McBride?
McBride abstains.
Counselor Parker?
Abstain.
Counselor Westervelt?
Abstain.
That passes 5 in favor. Bordelon, Baumgartner, Kasiri, Jones, Melendez. 1 opposed, Franco. 3 abstaining, McBride, Parker, Westervelt. All right, so
Motion to adjourn?
motion to adjourn made by Counselor Parker, seconded by Jones. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
You want to tell them there is a resolution. You want to tell them about the special counsel?
Okay.
Everyone?
We are adjourned at 8:46. I will notify the public. We still have to, again, vote on it at the council meeting, so, which will happen right now, just so everybody knows.
Going to adjourn this Cal meeting?
Right, we are adjourned, 9 in favor, 0 opposed, 0 abstaining,
Adjournment.
and we are adjourned at 8:46. Yep.
Yeah.
I'll call to order Tuesday, March 29, 2022, Town Council special meeting at 8:47. All councilors are present. On to new business. Any Edge Data Center host municipality fee agreement. I make a motion that the Groton Town Council has determined that it is not interested in continuing negotiations of a municipal host fee agreement at this time under the circumstances currently proposed by Any Edge, and hereby directs town staff to cease negotiations for a municipal host fee agreement with Any Edge concerning potential data centers under such circumstances so moved.
Second, Bordelon.
Moved by Melendez, seconded by Bordelon.
Excuse me. I thought you had passed the original resolution.
You're correct. I rescind my motion.
I take my
Point of
second back.
information.
I'll take my
What's your
second
point
back.
of information?
Don't we have to read all the whereases?
No, we just read the result.
You don't have to. The one that was in the original thing. Where if we look at the result, it'd have the 351 planners in it. Yep.
Oh, here it is.
Yeah.
I got it. I make a motion that the Groton Town Council does determine that 351 Flanders Road and surrounding properties are not a suitable location for a data center and directs staff to cease negotiations for a municipal host fee agreement with Any Edge concerning potential data centers at that location. So moved.
Second, Bordelon.
Moved by Melendez, seconded by Bordelon. Discussion? Councilor Franco?
This is the
Mr. Mayor?
exact terminology that the attorney said could potentially get us into a litigation, and this is exactly what we were told earlier today, that there could be legal consequences, and that we were asked to pass something different. I make an amended motion
All right.
that the Groton Town Council the problem is, there was nothing prepared for this situation as to passing in the cow. What basically the attorneys had stated that they recommended not adopting that version in the packet tonight because they needed more time to research the legalities of it, and then we passed it, and now we're in the town council, and now we have to come up with the proper terminology and the wording as what you just read potentially could get us into litigation. And the amended one is not exactly what you passed in the cow. Advice from the town manager?
Say again, please.
The advice on how we deal with this when we passed in the cow what we were asked not to pass because there's legalities in it, and we were asked to wait or pass the amended one while the attorneys had time to research the legalities of it. And now the one that they had made new is not exactly what we had passed in the cow.
Well, the one that's with the 351 is what was passed to the cow, other than it does have the with prejudice in it.
I'm sorry, that's not exactly what was passed in the cow.
I think she's, okay, so on the first page, what was passed in the cow, there is some wording
Read again.
differences. I think it does achieve the same thing, but
Read again for the motion, if you could, from the cow. Let me compare.
from the cow is to recommend a resolution discontinuing all efforts to pursue a municipal host fee agreement with Any Edge for properties generally located between Hazelnut Hill Road and Flanders Road, south of I-95 with prejudice. In this one, it's that the town...
Morris Act, right?
Right.
Right.
So my question, can we just pass what we passed in the cow?
Yeah, good.
Okay.
You could pass that, but the town attorneys have advised us not to until they can make and do their research on the legalities of it, or you're setting up the town for litigation.
Well, they did not make a recommendation. I, however, did say when I passed on the alternate version they prepared that, to be safe, you would do either hold off for the review or else pass the amended one. Now, this cow motion is fine for this. You could either switch them out, but it means essentially the same thing. I think the generally located language in the cow one is at least a little broader, in terms of maybe reduces the potentially liability a little bit.
I'll leave it up to somebody else to make.
And I will make it clear, it's unknown what the liability is at this point of passing it.
I'll leave it up to somebody else to make the amended motion. Thank you.
Councilor Kasiri?
Mr. Burt.
I'm sorry. Councilor Parker, did you have a hand?
I believe I put it down. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Kasiri?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Burt, can you just go over what the difference between the 5 and the 6 was?
The way the alternate was written, let me pull that up here. Let's see. Resolved, the Groton Town Council has determined that it is not interested in continuing negotiations of a municipal host fee agreement at this time under the circumstances currently proposed by Northeast Edge. See, it's more broad. It's not as definite as certain properties, and that property is not suitable. That reduces, could potentially reduce liability by having that language compared to actually naming properties. But again, the attorneys have not had a chance to weigh in on it. So because it's more broad, you're not saying for absolutely no, you're saying this version. So 5 could bring it back up. Whereas the other one is more definite, and 6 would have to bring it up.
I'd like to make an amended motion.
What's your motion?
Resolved that the Groton Town Council directs staff to cease negotiations for a municipal host fee agreement with any edge concerning potential data centers at that location with prejudice.
Second. Moved by Kasiri, seconded by Melendez.
Could you repeat that again?
It's the one from the cow, right?
Sure.
Okay, one from the cow, okay.
It's resolved that the Groton Town
Okay, got it.
Council, yep, and I just took out the address, basically.
Got it.
May I speak to my motion?
Yes.
I just want to make sure that we are not setting ourselves up for liability. I understand that it's the difference of one vote. However, I don't want to speak on behalf of other counselors. I know that I certainly am not going to want to bring this up again until many of your concerns are met. So I hope counselors will support this just so we're not taking on that extra liability. We're still ending stuff for now. Thank you.
Manager Burt.
Want to make it clear, in the current version, I'm not in favor of the host fee agreement, but I would be in favor of taking a cautious approach.
Thank you. So voting for the current motion on the floor? Thank you. Councilor Baumgartner?
Reminded of the great movie, The Godfather Part 3. Just when I thought I was out, they pull me back in. So I think we've already heard it enough this evening, and I commend the council for voting against voting to dissolve this agreement in the cow. I would question why we are questioning the legality of this motion when it would appear that Groton wouldn't get into any legal issues if we haven't signed any form of a host fee agreement with any edge. So I don't know what law or issue Groton would be running afoul in, and if we've not engaged in any contract with any edge at all.
It's not really involving that. I think what the attorney for the property owner is bringing up is akin to a partial taking by reducing what's allowed there. I think that's the concern, and what we haven't had time to look into. The question is, does our action actually have any impact on what use is there? Personally, I don't think so, but the attorneys don't know offhand, so they'd have to review it.
And I question that a bit if this host fee agreement, the initial agreement, was contingent on a land swap with the town of Groton, exchanging 17 acres on Flanders Road with any edge. So,
Point of order?
What's your point of order?
We're not discussing the land swap. We're only discussing what the agreement or non-agreement would be. Thank you.
That's correct. There is no land swap in the host fee agreement. Keep your remarks.
And to be clear, I'm just saying what the attorney for the property owner said. Our attorneys have not been able to weigh in on it, and I can't speak to the legality, really.
I think the motion that was approved in the cow is sufficient. It passes legal muster. The manager spoke with the attorney, said it wasn't an issue if the council voted on it. It had the affirmative votes. Let's do the people's work and get on with the evening. Thank you.
Councilor Westervelt?
I guess the only question I would have as far as the legality goes is we have a person who owns a parcel of property. He wants to sell it, and we've told him now that he cannot sell it for what he wanted to do. We don't get to decide what the zoning is. And if we say the land is unsuitable, then is that really our choice to say that? I'm not saying I'm agreeing with the data center or not. This is just one of those things where the process is flawed and we don't have enough information. And I am concerned that we are getting ourselves into some type of legal jeopardy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, Councilor Parker, when you get a chance.
Councilor Parker?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with Councilor Westervelt. Question, did we put in the word restricted
No.
or prejudice
With
in the
prejudice.
last motion when we voted in Cal?
In Cal, we did,
I have
Councilor.
concerns about
Right.
the verbiage. That's why I'm sorry?
The motion in the Cal has that verbiage. Councilor Kasiri, her motion as well on the floor right now also has that verbiage.
Okay,
So yes, it's in there.
again, I have concerns, so I will, that's why I abstained in the Cal, and will be abstaining again.
Thank you. Clerk McCousher?
My question, Mr. Mayor, is a matter of precedent. Aren't each counselor supposed to have a written document of the motions that are being put on the floor? It has to be in writing. I just don't know how you do this with Zooms and, I don't know, did everybody get a copy of these motions?
That's not required.
Motions?
Usually,
No.
like the former mayor would require you, the person making it, to write it down, but that's not an actual requirement.
No, I
Okay.
thought your rules say it has to be in writing.
We've never made it available to writing for all council members ever.
It's in our rules.
Yeah, we've never done it in the past.
So, I'm wondering if that
Because you didn't
is,
follow your rules doesn't mean you shouldn't now. I don't,
I think,
it's frightening. I still want to see a problem, I want to see the council into a problem. It's not, if the motion wasn't put into writing, reduced to writing,
Got it.
I'm not there, so I can't see if it was.
No, it doesn't say for everybody gets a copyright. Now, would it be satisfied if the person making the motion actually wrote it down and gave it to the mayor to
already
read?
did.
Yeah, so I think that covers it.
so, Councilor Parker, Councilor Parker.
That's what we needed. That's what we needed.
Yeah, I have that in my possession.
Yeah.
Councilor Parker, also, is that rule for referrals or motions? I believe that rule's for referrals, but I could be wrong.
No, we took that down away, too. We do them verbally at the council.
Okay, you're muted. All right, anyway, I have it in my possession. Hold on. Councilor Baumgartner, did you have the floor?
No, but I did have my hand raised, but there were others who had their hand.
Councilor Baumgartner.
I just, I love that we want to follow the rules, and that's something I always try, and I ask, and I usually get overturned or rejected. A simple way to fix this tonight would be to share screen, Mr. Mayor, type that up really quick so that the folks at home that can't see it or didn't hear it would see it. Counselors here, we're here, we have a right and we can pass it down, and then everyone would have seen it written. So let's pull up a screen share like we're having a PowerPoint presentation and type it into real time. That's how you resolve it right now. So if we have to take 5 minutes to do such, let's do it.
Councilor McBride?
Thank you, Mayor. I would concur with Councilor Westervelt and Councilor Parker. I believe this motion is completely unnecessary at the current time. No action this evening by the council is simply that. There's no action being taken. This council has to approve any agreement with any developer, and we're miles away from any such agreement, so I'm not sure why we're moving forward in this direction. The only thing this is doing is exposing us to additional upside risk to the town, and I'm completely opposed to it. Thank you.
Councilor Baumgartner?
Yes, and I mean this with the greatest respect to my colleagues. Just want to clarify if there was ever a doubt that we are volunteers. I mean, we're certainly, I can only speak for myself, but certainly not getting any richer from me. Serving on this electoral body, we volunteer our time.
I'm sorry, I can't hear him.
I'm stating, Councilor Parker, that we are all volunteers. And the research that we do on these items, we do it in our own time. And I do it because I take a lot of value in working with the community and learning from our constituents about issues that I'm passionate about or would like to learn more about, and solving problems in our community. And that's why I hope I was elected. And just want to recognize that even if we do agree on some issues, I have the utmost respect for the folks I serve with, and I know on any decision we make, it's not easy. Specifically on the matters of opening ourselves to legal liability, I just can't buy into that argument. We haven't signed any host agreement with any edge. Ratifying the host fee agreement would lock in tax breaks. There's nothing precluding Mr. Quinn, any edge, any data center from coming into the town and going through normal zoning approvals. The reason why they do not is because the state of Connecticut, the state legislature, granted tailor-made, very sweet tax abatements to data centers should they want to develop,
What's your point of order?
We are only talking about the current agreement. We are not worried about what the state has set up. We only need to be focused on what we're.
Okay.
It's all right.
Your point of order is well taken. Please keep your remarks.
Absolutely. The host fee agreement is contingent on state legislation, so it's absolutely related to what I'm referring to. It's germane. It'd be laughable to say otherwise. Yes, first and foremost, this host fee agreement is contingent on enabling state legislation. Again, nothing is precluding any edge from going before the Planning and Zoning Commission and saying, I'd like to develop a data center. What we are granting tonight is basically saying the okay for them to pay upwards of $500,000 per building. There have been numbers thrown out that any edge would be developing a data center utilizing anywhere between 100 and 250 megawatts. So this is purely a vote on a tax agreement. Enabling that tax agreement. And again, nothing is stopping Mr. Quinn from going through planning and zoning just like any other business would if they wanted industrial use. So just want to put that out there because I think we needed to clarify that. I just don't see the issues of legal, putting the town in legal jeopardy. I think it's a very flawed argument. And again, we've had the opportunity for, I would like our town attorneys just to kind of settle that one and clarify, because I'm not sure that's quite accurate, or even if they would say that to us.
Thank you.
If they're here this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Parker.
Mr. Mayor, can you please read the motion that we're approving tonight? Because I believe it says we are being prejudiced against a company.
It's not the.
That's not the definition.
Can you please reread the motion?
Councilor Kassiri, do you have it?
The amended motion, Councilor Parker, was resolved that the Groton Town Council directs staff to cease negotiations for a municipal host fee agreement with any edge concerning potential data centers at that location with prejudice.
My question to you all is, what do you mean by with prejudice? Explain that to the public of why we're doing it with prejudice.
Manager Burt, do you have a definition at hand?
Mr. Mayor, if you can address that.
Right. Yeah. I do not know the legal definition of with prejudice. The manager will ask the attorney.
Yeah. I don't think he's going to want to speak right off the top of his head. I think it's probably first more germane for the person who asked for it to maybe explain why they wanted it.
Councilor Baumgartner, can you speak to your adding with prejudice to your motion?
Sure. This is pulled from Cornell Law School website. In civil procedure, when a court dismisses a civil case with prejudice, it means that the court intends that for dismissal to be final in all courts, and that res judicata should bar that claim from being reasserted in another court. A dismissal without prejudice means the plaintiff is free to refile the claim in a different court. In evidence law, a judge might exclude a piece of evidence as prejudicial if it would unfairly bias the jury against a party. Specifically, with so with prejudice in this context is that this item cannot come up again.
It can come up again with 6 counselors asking, but I understand your definition. Thank you for your definition. Counselor Parker?
I know what it means. I just want to make sure the public knew what was stated. There's reasons why I asked specific questions. And
Okay.
again, I have concerns now that we've done this.
Okay.
Again, I will be voting, I will be abstaining.
Thank you. Counselor McBride?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So here we are again talking about wording issues. We're rushing through things. We're discussing and giving our own opinion, including me, which I am not aware about legal opinions. And we're all talking about the potential risk, potential issues that we're going to have. So I guess my big question is, and we all have different opinions and different thoughts, but at the end of the day, what's the rush with this? Why can't we at least postpone this until next meeting? It's a week away. At least if we do that, we're letting the expert attorneys that the administration pays for to make sure we're not messing anything up. I don't think a week is going to cause any harm. So I would like to make a motion to postpone this motion until our next regularly scheduled meeting on April 3rd.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion from McBride, a second from Westerville. This is already passed the. I believe this is our next council meeting.
Yes, that's the next scheduled council meeting, correct?
Okay.
Yes, that's the next scheduled
Before you can postpone, you have to work your way through the actual motions. You can't add on a postponement in the middle of the motions.
Okay, so if these motions fail, then we can postpone. Is that what you're saying?
You can't consider it until you
Okay.
get through these, right?
Okay, so at this point, that motion is out of order.
Okay, thank you.
Make a motion. May I make a motion?
Yep, Counselor Parker.
I move the previous question.
Moving the question at this point would be moving
This is
Counselor Kasiri's motion.
Amendment.
Amended
I'm calling
motion.
for a vote, sir.
On Counselor Kasiri's amended motion? Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Move the question by Parker, moved by Parker, seconded by Jones. That is not debatable. All in favor on moving the question, say aye.
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 Okay. I have Jones, Westerville, Franco, Parker, Melendez. Opposed?
McBride was an aye, too.
McBride.
McBride was an aye. Sorry.
Opposed?
Nay.
Kasiri, Baumgartner, Bordelon. So we are at the vote on Counselor Kasiri's motion. All in favor say aye.
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 Actually, we'll do roll call here. Counselor Bordelon.
I just want to clarify, there's how many motions on the floor before I vote on this that's left?
There's Counselor Kasiri's motion and then my motion.
Perfect, thank you. I vote no to Cassieri's.
Counselor Baumgartner.
No.
Counselor Kasiri.
Yes.
Counselor Franco.
No.
Counselor Jones.
Yes.
Counselor McBride.
I abstain.
Counselor Parker.
Abstain.
Counselor Westervelt.
Abstain.
And Melendez is yes. So that fails. 3 in favor, Kasiri, Jones, Melendez. 3 opposed, Bordelon, Baumgartner, Franco. 3 abstaining, McBride, Parker, Westervelt.
I'd like to make a motion.
What's your motion?
Make a motion to recommend a resolution discontinuing all efforts to pursue a municipal host fee agreement with Any Edge for properties generally located between Hazelnut Hill Road and Flanders Road, south of I-95.
Second.
That's not different enough. That's, you're not, I don't know if that's significant enough to do.
Did that motion second?
The motion is frivolous. That we just took out with prejudice, right? Correct?
Well, I took out the 351 Flanders Road. I went to the original cow.
But that's the,
Excuse me, Mayor?
Yeah.
Frivolous motions, I don't think this applies. Frivolous doesn't apply to this. And also, you can have two motions on, 2 amendments to the original motion. And for some reason, you didn't allow Councilor McBride's motion to postpone go through, and it should have been allowed because there was only 1 amendment on the floor.
right. So it's my understanding that in order to postpone the vote, we have to go through all the votes that are currently on the floor first.
I'd like to check with the attorney on it to make sure.
Okay.
I don't think the attorney needs to be consulted. That's Robert's rules.
I'll
Point of,
defer to the,
may I just ask a clarifying question?
What's your clarifying question?
We're throwing a bunch of different opinions around. You know, the mayor, the
What's
manager.
your clarifying question?
The mayor stated that motion could not be put on by Westervelt, and that's why you acted. Now the clerk is saying that shouldn't be. So, like, I mean, and now you want an attorney's opinion. So I'm just getting confused here because you're giving confusing signals.
Manager Byrd.
I just received an opinion from the attorney that he thinks it's okay to do the postponement
Okay.
motion.
This is.
Councilman McBride, would you like to make your motion to postpone?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I would like to make a motion due to the questions and concerns related to this to ensure the administration and the attorneys have proper time to review to make sure the wording is correct, to postpone this matter until the next regularly scheduled meeting, which I believe is April 5th.
Is there moved
Second,
by
Parker.
moved by McBride, seconded by Westervelt? Any discussion on postponement? Councilor Bordelon.
So here we are again. Now everybody wants all this time, and you know this development has come before us multiple times on a fast delivery system with barely any deadlines or time to review, and then now all of a sudden we want to add another week, but we're sending things on a Friday, and you know all of a sudden now everybody wants to slow it down. That's what I was screaming from the beginning. And that's why we're in the mess that we're in my opinion. I'll speak for myself as a counselor. The process is flawed, as stated, Councilor McBride had stated the same thing. The fastest way to end this is to get out of this development, which is what the people wanted, because there's been so many quick processes without anybody's involvement. People don't even know what we should do. We're getting text message attorney opinions. Right now, the best option for this town council is to end this vote tonight. And if you guys want to talk about more time, have it. But get your 6 counselors to bring it back, and let's do it the right way with the right process. But right now, this needs to end, and I encourage the counselors to move in that direction, and I encourage the town manager to support that, since we do not have an attorney present. You're having to get text information. Things are coming in last minute. This is what we work with people. This is what it's like to sit up here last minute. Let's end it tonight.
Thank you. Councilor Franco.
Thank you. So I hear a lot going on here tonight, and with government, yes, things come in. They come in all the time, day, night, all, like, holidays, everything is constantly, we're getting an influx of information nonstop. There are resolutions that are being made, motions amended, and there's a lot going on here tonight. I personally, just from my perspective, as I said earlier, this is the first time that we're really having a conversation about this as a council tonight, about data center on the, in our community like this. And it may not be popular to say, but our first time that we may have had an opportunity to discuss this, what we're saying to businesses that come to us asking for something, whether we say yes or no to it, is that, no, we don't want to talk to you, go away. And I'm just simply saying, this is the message that Groton is sending right now. And this, I have the floor. I have the floor.
Point of order.
I have the floor.
I would like her not to speak on behalf of myself.
I have the floor.
Saying that council.
I have the floor.
So point of order.
What is your point of order?
My point of order is that she's saying that the council, and that's her opinion, and it should just be stated that she feels that way, not everybody else up here. Thank you.
Your point of order is well taken. Please only speak to your, please do not speak to the motives of other counselors. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think that the process should have played out. I will vote to postpone this so that we can get the terminology correct, so that the town is not put in undue legalities. I think that the proper thing would have been for us to follow the normal process, not to have a special meeting on a budget night of all nights, and to have it during a regular COW meeting where we could have had conversations. I think this is unwise. I think the way the original motion was written was way out of line, and I think there's a lot of problems that we're dealing with right now, and we need to take a breather and come back to this when we have more opinions on this that we are not qualified to do with right now. Thank you.
Council Bordelon, this, and just so I'm clear with everybody, this is on to postpone.
Correct. It was stated that there's a lot of things that, now this, that. It was just stated that, were there emails to object even having this type of meeting? I mean, this came out Friday. I sent my emails asking for public comment. Nobody supported me. And now where I'm hearing that people want public comment and discussion, where were you before? I've been saying it all along. The fact that the process of which this meeting has not allowed for council to speak, some have met with the developer. What was said there? It's not been fully present and upfront. You're right, there hasn't been. I haven't had a chance. I'll speak for myself. I have not met with the developer. Other councilors up here have met with the developer. So if there's a problem with the process, you weren't slowing it down before, we shouldn't have got this far. People should have been throwing red flags on this whole process to begin with. This should have been dead in the water weeks ago, if you want to talk about process.
Right. Point of order.
And the fact that nobody,
What's your point of order?
up
Are
here,
you talking to me?
I'm speaking in general.
No, you're talking to me. You're just saying
No,
you.
I'm speaking in general.
I have the floor.
Council,
I have the floor. I have the floor.
That we did not.
I have the floor. Council Parker, what is your point of order?
The quorum? What?
Oh,
The quorum?
Thank you, Councilor Parker.
It's in our rules, decorum.
Thank you, Counselor Parker.
Your point of order is well taken. I ask councilors to keep decorum.
What I'm stating is that there was no objections. People are asking for public comment. As I stated, I sent those emails. I asked for public comment. I got an email back from the town manager stating that the mayor did not want it, and there was no other support for it. All these people are here tonight that could have spoke. If there's a problem with the process, I asked the town manager, how come this has not followed the normal process then? How come we have not had the proper chains of the meeting, which I've been saying all along? So I'd like an
Councilor Parker,
answer.
what's your point of order?
We've had this discussion. This is the 4th time we've heard this argument. Please have a substantive argument.
Okay. So I will allow the discussion for the moment. You have 1 minute 15
Thank you.
seconds left.
I'm allowed to repeat. We have time limits and amounts of times we can speak. And if I want to say the same thing over and over, that's my right, Parker. Counselor Parker, you guys put restrictions.
Okay.
And I have the right to say it. So my question to the town manager
Do not
is,
address
well, I'm
other
referring
councilors.
back. She
Do
went
not.
forward with me.
No.
Town manager,
Point of order, decorum.
how come we have not had the proper process with
Point
this
of
development?
order.
That's my question to the town manager.
I take direction from the council. I was asked to put it out there. Don't look at staff.
So my question is, where do you guys meet to discuss how you want to put these on? Because I've never been reached or contacted to even have this meeting. So when is this being discussed? That's my question. So if you're getting the direction from the council, how come this councilor is not a part of that discussion?
Relayed by the mayor.
So one person, the mayor, chose to have this meeting.
The mayor can call a
Right.
special meeting or the
so-
town clerk with 3
and the
councilors.
direction of the manager, are you giving any feedback to the new mayor as to maybe this is not the proper process, or
There's nothing
are you
improper.
just running along with it? I'm confused.
There's nothing improper.
The mayor can call a
I'm
special meeting.
confused by the fact that
Point of
there's
order,
a change in the
decorum.
patterns.
Thank you.
Out of hand.
Any other discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilor Westervelt.
make a motion to move the question.
Second. Westervelt makes a motion to...
Second.
Okay. Westervelt moves to move the question. Melendez seconds. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed?
Nay.
Abstentions? Okay, that carries 7 in favor, 2 opposed. Baumgartner, Bordelon, 0 abstaining. So we are voting on the motion to postpone until the next council meeting on April 5th. All in favor, say aye.
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 Request a roll call.
Council Bordelon, how do you vote?
No.
Council Baumgartner?
No.
Council Kasiri?
No.
Council Franco?
Yes.
Council Jones?
No.
Council McBride?
Yes.
Council Parker?
Yes.
Council Westervelt?
Aye.
Okay, and Melendez is no, so that fails. 4 in favor, Franco, McBride, Parker, Westervelt, 5 abstaining, 5 no, Bordelon, Baumgartner, Kasiri, Jones, 0 abstaining. So we are back to the main motion. Any discussion before I call the vote? Council Bordelon.
Before we go back to making sure it's typed up, do you want to read it again? Are you going to submit it online on the projection screen here, Town Manager, so that we can avoid that pause again? Just make sure the motion's up there so everybody can read it. That way we can move this along.
Mr. Mayor, are we voting on my amended motion first?
That one failed.
Oh, okay, thank you.
So my question to the town manager, are we able to put that up on the screen so everybody can see?
Okay, hold on. 1 second. Trying to find it. Okay, I have it here. I can read it. I don't have an act. I
Do you
can't.
have the technology, John, Mr. Mayor?
I assume there's word on there. I can't say for certain. We just tell me again to make sure I have the right one, and I can go type it.
But it's resolved that the Groton Town Council does determine that 351 Flanders Road and surrounding properties are not a suitable location for a data center and directs staff to cease negotiations for a municipal host fee agreement with any edge concerning potential data centers at that location.
And this is the original one in the actual agenda packet, right?
That's the motion on the floor.
Right, so, yeah, it's the one that is already out there in public.
So that's what we're moving. Okay. And we will, Councilor Kassiri?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I can no longer support this with the address in there, so I will not be supporting it any longer. Thank you.
Point of clarification, quickly.
She has the floor. Do you yield the floor for his question?
Yes.
Just to make it abundantly clear, my motion did not state the address.
Okay. Can you read the motion again? I'm sorry.
That the Groton Town Council does determine that 351 Flanders Road and surrounding properties are not a suitable location for a data center and direct staff to cease negotiations for a municipal host fee agreement with any edge concerning potential data centers at that location.
No, and that's not the motion I handed you.
Okay, where's your motion?
It's in your hands.
Right there. This right here, you said to use.
That one, we voted on that one. That one failed.
No, that was not
No.
the motion he put on.
It's not, that didn't fail, that passed. Watch the tapes.
We voted on the motion with prejudice. It failed.
No.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
can Councilor Baumgartner state his motion again then?
Yeah, the motion was to recommend a resolution discontinuing all efforts to pursue a municipal host fee agreement with any edge for properties generally located between Hazelnut Hill Road and Flanders Road south of I-95 with prejudice. You voted for it. Councilor Jones voted for it. Councilor Bordelon voted for it. Mayor Melendez voted for it, and I voted for it. Affirmative, 5 votes.
Yeah.
That was
Right.
voted on account.
That was in the count.
Yes, and then that motion was put on. You read it. And Councilor Bordelon seconded the motion.
Okay.
Because we vote,
We have a lot.
pass out of cow.
We have a, hold on.
And there was a clarifying question about the word prejudice, if I remember correctly. And then it was read.
Right,
He read the
you're correct.
definition.
You're correct.
If I remember correctly.
So Councilor Kassiri's failed. Baumgartner's is on the floor. Mine is the main motion. We will be voting on Councilor Baumgartner's motion first. Can you read it again, just for clarification?
He wants you to read it.
Just for clarification.
Make a recommend a resolution discontinuing all efforts to pursue a municipal host fee agreement with any edge for properties generally located between Hazelnut Hill Road and Flanders Road south of I-95 with prejudice.
I'll second it again.
Okay. Councilor Bordelon, how do you vote?
Yes.
Councilor Baumgartner?
Yes.
Councilor Kassiri?
Yes.
Councilor Franco?
No.
Councilor Jones?
Yes.
Councilor McBride?
Nick Pride abstains. Nick Pride.
Councilor Parker?
Abstains.
Councilor Westerville?
Abstain.
And Melendez votes in favor. That passes 5 in favor. Bordelon, Baumgartner, Kassiri, Jones, Melendez.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn by Bordelon, seconded by Jones. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Nice job. Yes, sir.
Opposed?
Good vote.
Abstentions? That carries unanimously. 9 in favor, 0 opposed, 0 abstaining. We are adjourned at 9:33.